fire, strumming along with our favorite lyre. Adventure call, the quest awaits, your destiny's in the hands of the fates. But never fear, we're all friends here, we'll have your back when danger's near. Come with us through the pages as we unravel a tale for the ages into the Percy-Verse.
Hello and welcome to the Percy-Verse Podcast. I'm Alisa.
And I'm Anna. Get out your blue corn chips, blue jelly beans, and blue saltwater taffy, because today we're discussing The Lightning Thief, Chapter 3, Grover Unexpectedly Loses His Pants.
Okay.
Woo! Sally
Woo.
Jackson!
Yes, but first thing
Yes.
that I realized and I really want to pay attention to with the rest of these chapter titles is so far all three of them have basically revealed the ending of the chapter. And I don't think I ever realized that before. That the chapter titles are what happens at the end of the chapter. So I want to pay attention to see if that stays throughout the whole time. Because I don't remember the chapter titles enough off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I opened this, like reading this chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, this is another one where the chapter title tells us exactly what happens at the end.
And by the time you get to the end, again, you're not thinking about that. You're not remembering that that's the chapter title. Like, you're like, oh yeah, oh, that was the chapter title. But Grover's not even in this chapter until the last two pages. So yeah, you do forget, and it is so similar. And I didn't notice that before either. So I'm very curious to see if that is a trend that continues or not. We'll have to pay attention.
Yeah. I'm especially curious once we get to the very end and we're kind of at like the climax of the story. Do we get the ending of these final chapters that have big reveals in them? Do we kind of get those reveals in the chapter titles? Yeah, I'm very curious to see.
Yeah, because I think that in my mind, it was like the chapter titles describe like something out of the chapter or the overall of the chapter. Like, I'm trying to remember when they're in with all the animals, like is that what's highlighted at the in the chapter title? So anyway, I'm very curious as well. I'm excited to see. I guess we do reference Grover like right up top, but he's not really in the chapter until the end.
He's not a character in the chapter. He's like present with dialogue in the chapter until the very
It's
very
also
end.
a funny misdirect because like does he lose it? I don't think he actually loses his pants. Like he probably takes them off anymore. Because he doesn't need pants. He has built-in pants.
This is a 911 emergency.
It's like, a 911
I can't
emergency.
To be human anymore. I need full mobility, and I gotta be able to run as fast.
We're not pretending anymore, and also I have built-in pants. Like I don't need pants because
true. Yeah,
I come with pants included, like an action figure.
Pants are always on. They cannot be taken off.
So I just wrote "uh-oh" under the chapter title because oops, unexpectedly loses pants. It's not what you normally want unless you are a satyr.
No. Yeah.
But also, right up top, Percy is like, confession time. I ditched Grover as soon as we got to the bus terminal. And if you remember, we end the last chapter with Grover looking at Percy mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flowers that Percy would like best on his coffin. And he's just been muttering, why does this always happen? Why does it always have to be 6th grade? And so I was like, I get it, honestly.
Absolutely.
Like, I get it, Percy.
Yes.
And also, poor anxious Grover.
I know.
We've got anxious Grover right now.
Percy knows that whenever Grover gets upset, his bladder acts up.
I
and then
know.
Percy had that bit of like strategy brain kick on to go, okay, now's my chance to get away.
But also he's been so observant of his friend.
Yeah.
So sweet.
What I have to say about the very opening of this chapter with confession time, another moment, Percy's talking directly to us, which I love, that like breaking the fourth wall. But I think something about it saying confession time and it being a straight to us where he is confessing, hey, I did this thing. To me, it felt like one of those moments in reality TV where they cut to the confessional and the person is like talking about what you're witnessing.
Oh my God, I would have absolutely like had no problem in the TV show if they did it like that.
Oh, totally.
Where someone was like interviewing all the characters and they're just like cutting to them telling the story. Like, imagine Annabeth's snark about whatever Percy was doing at the time.
Yes.
I would watch that. I would for sure watch that.
It just kind of made me feel like every time he's kind of breaking that fourth wall and talking directly to us, I'm not kind of picturing it like we're watching a reality TV show and we're seeing a bunch of stuff and then he cuts in just to kind of.
I'm picturing like how they have like a backdrop. It's like it's like a beach scene behind him, and then there's like a little bit of sand on the floor with like a a bucket and a little pail.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's all I'm gonna picture now when he talks to us.
So yes, that was I was kind of first time I've ever read this book and kind of imagined it as if we're watching a little reality TV show, which, to be fair, the drama and the interpersonal dynamics of the Olympian gods are kind of like their own reality TV show.
And even if they're kids, 100%. And also like it's entertaining in a very similar way, and it is real life. Like, these are true events. Yeah. So
very true events.
It's as real as reality TV is. Yeah, so it's like we get this little chunk here that's about ditching Grover, and then we really get into the chapter. So I thought that was interesting. It's like a little bit of a connector piece.
Yeah, it was reminding me of how at the beginning of chapter 1 we have that kind of little intro. This felt like another kind of little moment like that, of a little intro, a little kind of setup before we then get into the rest of the chapter.
And in this case, I would have probably been fine if like we learn in the last chapter that he ditches Grover and the whole thing starts with a word about my mother before you meet her.
Yeah.
I would have been totally fine with that, but maybe it is more suspenseful to like not know what happens after the bust.
Yes. Yeah.
Potentially. So
I mean, the ending on the line of he looked at me mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flowers I'd like best on the coffin, is a pretty incredible chapter ending.
It definitely is a cliffhanger.
So I do think it's a great way to end that chapter. And then just kind of this little, I also think confession time. I ditched Grover as soon as we got to the bus terminal is such a fun way to start.
Totally.
The chapter.
Well, and it kind of turns on its head. Like, it's doing the opposite of what the last chapter Grover asked him for.
Yes.
Poor Grover, though. Hold on, though. Like, you're really anxious. You have to use the bathroom. You have to pee. You go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You come out. Percy is nowhere.
Heart pounding, a mile. Just
like, if we think about the alternate storyline that's happening underneath what we're about to discuss, of like Grover from point A to point B, like from bus terminal to Montauk,
just completely stressed out.
Oh my gosh, it would be the most stressful chapter you'd ever read in your whole life. Like, the man is stressing. So anyway,
we can add that to our kind of like alternate the other stories is this chapter from Grover's journey
from the bus terminal.
I honestly am kind of curious because it becomes clear at the end of the chapter that Sally and Grover know each other, have met,
Yeah.
And so I am kind of curious, like, does Grover know where Percy lives, or does he have to go on a whole adventure to figure out where Percy lives,
right?
And then by the time he gets there, realize that he's gone. Like, does he talk to Smelly Gabe?
I think Grover probably knows where Percy's apartment is, like just from like Camp Half-Blood records, because like he's part of that system, you know what I mean? And then like the question is, like, does he know about Montauk already?
I know. Like, does he talk to Smelly Gabe?
Yeah.
Or, or does he, I don't know. I'm like, because we learn later on, he has like a very keen sense of smell. So like, is he maybe just kind of like tracking
Percy's smell?
Because the thing for me is it takes him long enough to get to Montauk. You know, like it takes him a long time to catch up with Percy. And
so, he knows that the Minotaur is coming. Yes. So I'm curious of like what this alternate storyline is, where Grover is encountering some monsters, or like who is on Percy's smell. Yeah. And like, because Percy even has like a premonition in this chapter that like someone, you know, is like maybe tracking him. And like, obviously that is true, but it's a lot of different monsters. So
yeah.
I'm super curious. And smell is a huge component of this chapter. So I'm excited to dive into that for sure. Which totally leads us to the next section where we get our first named introduction to Percy's mom.
Yes. To the one, the only, the wonderful Sally Jackson. I think probably, you know, I think I said this in one of our previous episodes, but I think one of the best moms written in fiction. Just an incredible character.
Yeah. And, you know, starts out with she's the best person in the world. And I feel like something that's nice about this is there's a lot of like tropes about like bad parents in literature, which makes sense because for kids, you know, being heroes or doing adventures, like there has to be a reason that they're able to go on these adventures. And a lot of the time you're like, why wouldn't your parents stop you, or why, you know, whatever.
And it's usually either because their parents are no longer alive or their parents are terrible.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like one or the other.
Exactly. Or both. Like sometimes your parents aren't alive and the people raising you are terrible. Like pretty common. Harry Potter. And you know, many other orphan types, you know, stories, which are, as you know, my favorite stories. So I feel like it is really interesting in this particular series. The reason it works is because of like the Greek myth and the hero's journey, and that like she understands that he would need to be able to go on adventures and to prove himself, and this is like part of the world that he's in, and like kudos to her, like I even said, for, you know, sending him off to boarding school, and like she obviously loves him so much, and it's probably really, really hard for her, like being a loving parent of a demigod must be one of the hardest positions to be in ever. But it's just so refreshing to have a kind parent figure, and kind biological parent nonetheless, you know, in a book about a kid who's like having a rough time.
Yeah. And I think she provides this really lovely counter to the Olympian god parentage side, which, you know, you kind of learn that they're basically just fully absent parents. You know, they're not a part of their kids' lives. Even when we learn about situations where their kids are in not great situations with their other biological parent, Luke, and their godly parent is not doing anything really about it and isn't really helping in any way, even though they are, you know, these immensely powerful beings who could snap their fingers and change everything. And so I think it's such a lovely counter to have Sally be such an example of she is merely immortal, but she does everything in her power to try and love and protect Percy and do what is within her means to keep him as safe as she can, given that she's only immortal and she does not have any powers that are magical.
She's a little bit magical. She's a little magical, which is referenced here. She's a little magical, which I have thoughts about. But no, she doesn't have like powers that could be used for like defending him or combat in the same way. Like you know, she has some powers of sight or observation, but no, it is different, and her unending patience with him. I think like there are other human parents in the series who, even knowing the truth about who their children are, don't have this level of patience with what that actually means. Like, and I think that goes back to the gods again, because like those parents probably didn't have informed consent about like how kids would turn out as demigods. Like the gods aren't like, so just so you know, like if we have a kid together, you know, there'll be monsters at your door. And, you know, I don't think that conversation is happening knowing what we know about the gods. Yeah. So, like, the gods ultimately, at the end of the day, really are the responsible party for all of this and really are the ones dropping the ball and, you know, not doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and then in Percy Jackson's description of her, after she says she's the best person in the world, he says, which just proves my theory that the best people have the rottenest luck, which I felt like was such an insight into how he sees the world and what he kind of believes about the world and how things will or will not work out. So yeah, I found that very, very interesting.
I agree. It's really an interesting thing about his character, and I wonder, it makes me wonder, does Percy think that he is a good person that has rotten luck? Because, you know, we also know that he has some sense of like shame that's been put into him by teachers and other people around, you know, his school performance and how he acts with other kids and stuff like that. So I'm like curious, because he obviously like, he's going to talk about, I don't know if he'd call it luck or not, but like he has a lot of like weird things that happen to him, which kind of feels like bad luck. Yeah. But also it makes me think of the book Holes, because there's like a whole curse on Stanley Yelnat's family to have like rotten luck from his like great whatever pig stealing no good dirty rotten great grandpa or whatever. And so it kind of like, because that's also kind of like a different situation, but still like you're going to a camp, you know, that's not what you think it is. and you know, you're a good person with bad luck. So anyway, it just made me think of Holes as well. But yeah, I just wonder, you know, how Percy fits into his own worldview about this theory of good people who have bad luck. And then I think it's interesting what I was saying about characters who don't have parents and who experience challenges and stuff like that. In this description about Sally Jackson's bad luck, it's like she's that kid. Like if we were reading the Sally Jackson story, add it to the endless list of stories that could be, you know, it's, you know, he's written plenty of stories, but there's still so much universe to be expanded here.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So much. But, you know, if we're reading...
Give us the Sally Jackson prequel.
Give us the Sally Jackson, you know, memoir or something. But wouldn't that be fun? Like a memoir written from her perspective?
Also, you know what would be really fun? Is if he wrote the book, because she writes books.
I know.
Like, what is the book that she writes?
I know. We need that too.
Yes, we need that
too. But like her backstory definitely reads similar to kind of some of the tropes I was talking about of like the Disney kids with no parents kind of thing.
She could absolutely be in her own Disney movie with
Sally Jackson, Disney princess.
Sally Jackson is a Disney princess because her parents died when she was young and she was raised by an uncle who didn't care much about her.
Wait, one of the who then gets sick and she has to drive out and take care of him. I believe, if I remember the rules correctly of how to be a Disney princess, one of the ways is to marry royal. And if we kind of don't worry too much about the rules of what marriage is.
Yes. We just kind of count her relationship. Sally Jackson is a Disney princess.
Sally Jackson is a Disney princess. You heard it here first.
I mean, owned by Disney, published by Disney, a show on Disney.
I need to see her at the theme parks. Let's go.
Disney princess. Yes.
Let's go.
She needs to be when they do the when they're all kind of like doing their oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
The parade.
The word, yes. The word parade fully left my brain. It fully left my brain. I was like, what is it called when people walk in a line?
Queuing, I think, if you're British.
I need to see her like on one of those little floats on the parade, waving her hand, saying hi to the little
and she'd
kids.
Be like in the water park, the water theme park. Yeah.
Yep. Wearing her little,
I love this.
What's it called? Sweet America.
Oh my God, for sure. Her
Sweet
apron.
on America uniform. Yeah.
I love it. Imagine like that outfit, but turned into a big ball gown too. That would be really gosh.
Fun. Yes. And she could have some fun times with Ariel. They could chat.
And she just like throws candy.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, but I bet Ariel knows Poseidon.
Oh yeah. I'm saying I feel like they could dish. Like, she could hang with Ariel and they could absolutely dish.
Oh, for sure. Triton, Poseidon, the whole gang.
Yes. Yeah.
There's so much chisme to be had there. I am really into this. I need this. And I believe it to be true. I love that she wanted to be a novelist too, because I think it's always fun when writers, especially in their first books, have a character who wants to write books, because it's like, it's so, it's like a self-insert, self-prophecy kind of situation. And as people who are writing books, I feel like I at least really relate to this feeling of I'm going to pour that into somebody who has a dream.
Yeah. No, totally.
And that's a big, long arc that I'm very excited about us following.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for it. I'm so excited. And it's an arc that we get more of that you have not read yet.
I'm so excited. It's really hard because, like, I want to jump ahead, but then I, like, have to catch up. Anyway. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. One of the things that really stood out to me about the description of Sally Jackson that Percy gives us is I feel like she has just so much perseverance.
Yes.
Like, life hits her in so many different ways. Starting at such a young age, losing her parents, then being raised by someone who didn't really care about her, to then have to turn around and take care of him at the end of his life, and lose out on her senior year of high school.
Oh my gosh.
Lose out on being able to just graduate high school, like, all of her
and she
other
had
peers
saved
would have been
money
doing.
to go to a good creative writing program, to go to college.
And then she has to put money into the man who didn't really take care of her, is what we kind of get the gist of. Like,
it does make me think. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, but just that her ability to still see, like, the good in life, and to her ability to have so much love for Percy, and this, like, you get the feeling from her that she's not given up on life at all, and she is still able to find joy in the small things, and she's still able to have her own hopes and dreams that she has not lost, which like we find out about when they're at Montauk.
Never yell and
and
be a kind person. It makes me feel like she had good parents. Like, maybe they died when she was young, but it makes me feel like she built a secure attachment with her parents when she was little. That and like, some of this is nature, nurture, like like, she obviously, like, defaults to somewhat of this personality, right? Like, like, this is, she embodies it so much that it's clearly an essential core part of who she is. But it just makes me think, like, she probably had loving parents, and it's a bummer that they died. And I think that, like, that gives her then the ability to pass on that secure attachment to Percy, because I feel like we talked about that before in an earlier chapter, that his reaction to stuff, like, he doesn't just give up on people and leave them or get complete, and he has that glimmer, like, he's gonna do it in a little bit little positive reframe moment. He has access to that that he probably got from his mom, that I appreciate and relate to. But it is a really tragic story, and I think it's good to see examples of people who have been through a lot and are still, like, kind and still good people and still like can be good parents, because I think it's kind of like it turns, like, hurt people on its head, and it's like they don't have to, though. You have some agency and control over how you treat other people and how you are in life. And Sally Jackson's a great example of that.
Oh, absolutely. And I thought the other thing that was really interesting after we get this description of her life is when Percy says the only good break she ever got was meeting my dad. And I found that really interesting, because it shows us that, like, clearly that means anytime Sally has mentioned his dad, it has only been with positive, kind words, even though she has raised Percy entirely on her own.
Yeah.
Like, and it feels so Sally Jackson of her to make sure that Percy does not think negatively of his dad, despite the fact that he has not been there for his life. You know, it feels like she has really kind of made sure that, like, he would have positive associations with this person that he never met.
Yeah. And who, like,
we don't know. You know, there's a little, maybe he met him as baby, but
there's a little question mark here.
Maybe Poseidon, you know.
There's a little question mark here. But definitely someone who was not involved in his life.
Yeah.
And, well, you know, she understands the bigger stakes. She knows who Poseidon is, like, all the things.
Yeah.
But, you know, someone's level of importance should not excuse them from, like, being a present parent or, like, a good parent. Yeah. And so it would be totally valid for her to feel resentful or frustrated or all the things. And I don't think that's as much in her character as we were just discussing. But I feel like your point is super important, that however her feelings, it's not like she's, like, fully hiding her feelings from Percy either. Like, he talks about her as someone who, like, you know, oh, I know, like, she could cry, or she would feel this way, or she, you know, so, because you can go too far in the other direction and, like, never show your feelings to your kids.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
But I think that in this case, it's like, she shares feelings, but she's not oversharing in a way that's, like, unhealthy, where she's like,
yes,
your deadbeat dad, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Or something. And, like, even if she knows the stakes, it would still be totally fair of her to, like, have feelings about him not being present.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And that was something, and we'll get into a little bit more when we get to the part where they're at Montauk, but that I really noticed, that scene where they're, like, at the fire. I just really noted that it was so wonderful to have a scene of a parent being vulnerable with their child in a way that was healthy and with good kind of parental child boundaries, where, like, Percy at no point, like, she never parentifies Percy. No. He's never placed in a position where he feels like he has to, like, be the parent to her.
Right.
What she's able to do is share, like you're saying, like, he knows things that make her sad, that she might start to cry, but he doesn't feel a sense of, like, oh no, I did something wrong, know, or oh, I need to take care of her now. It's, you know, she really has done such a wonderful job of kind of maintaining that she is the parent. You know, he is the child. He gets to be a child. And I think that is her biggest wish for him, especially knowing the greater stakes, is that Percy gets some part of his life that is an actual childhood before he goes and he no longer has a childhood.
And he
like,
does the literal weight of the world on his shoulders eventually.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's so wonderful that it seems really clear that she has been able to give that to him, despite the fact that there were scary things kind of happening, and this mythological world wasn't really totally leaving Percy alone, that she did do everything she could to kind of
he had a childhood
safe from it. Yeah, he had a childhood.
And even the way, like, when we, you know, that he talks about Montauk, like, it has that nostalgic quality of, like, places you went as a kid that make you feel like, you know, free or fun or whatever. Like, he's had enough of that, you know, that's very clear and comes through in this chapter. So she's done a great job of that. And I'm very curious if, you know, we go back and forth here where, like, Percy has this sort of warm glow, the barest trace of a smile, you know, kind of thing about his dad. And then, you know, later his mom's telling him that he's never met his dad. Yeah. And I'm just like, knowing Percy and like how much things stick in his brain. I'm like, Poseidon, like, popped in one day and stood over the crib.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yes.
You can't convince me otherwise. Like,
no.
Percy's definitely not imagining this.
No, very much. And given when we have that scene, you know, what is that, 2 books from now, where Poseidon sees Sally for the first time, and you get the sense that Poseidon fell hard. He was down bad for Sally Jackson. And to me, I'm kind of like, okay, he's gonna go pop in and see, not only because you know, as we find out, he had a baby that he had sworn not to have. But then also had a baby with a woman that I think he genuinely fell in love with in that summer. And so I think also probably just had to be like, okay, what does our kid look like? You know?
I just realized that Summer Levin from Greece completely applies here. And Sally Jackson and Poseidon definitely.
Oh my gosh.
Definitely had a Summer Levin summer. and then went back to Australia.
Yeah.
As you do. That's so funny. Yeah, but I do think that Percy, I don't remember if Sally knows like the pact that the main three gods made.
Oh yeah, I don't remember.
Or the prophecy, you know, any kind of tidbits about that. But it's worth noting that like other gods don't have the same excuse of like you're literally sworn not to have kids.
Yes.
And so like sure, you know, you're not necessarily then gonna go like be super engaged parenting your kid if you like swore a super intense oath not to, which everybody broke that oath, which, you know,
literally everybody broke
everybody sometimes multiple times, which is like Poseidon actually did the best out of everyone, I think. But I'm like, knowing Greek mythology, it's like of course they did. That was doomed. But I think again, it's like that doesn't mean Sally wouldn't have feelings about it, but there is sort of like really, really intense kind of prophecies and godly oaths at work here that wouldn't be true for other demigods' parents. So here we hear what Sally says like as our sort of reason, and maybe this is where we're learning how Percy gets his reasoning of you know, like he's so good at being like, oh, this must be why this happened in immortal reasoning. And she says that Poseidon, who we don't know is Poseidon yet, was rich and important and their relationship was a secret. And then I love this excuse. One day he set sail across the Atlantic on some important journey.
Just never came back.
Never came back. And he was lost at sea. And I was just like, Poseidon is like the one being on Earth who could never be lost at sea.
Yeah. Okay. But my theory about this, because of kind of what we learn then in The Last Olympian and how kind of all of the gods are lost, I was like, he's not physically lost, but I would argue that he's probably emotionally, spiritually lost. And maybe, you know, maybe Sally Jackson was picking up on something a little deeper, kind of being like, this man might know where he is in the sea, but emotionally does he know where he is?
I see.
You know, because I do think we kind of meet a spiritually lost Poseidon.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
I read that, and for the first time I went, maybe funny. Sally Jackson was picking up on some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, she's pretty emotionally
that there's
attuned.
More, you know, more going on. Yeah.
Poor guy. Just has all the power of the ocean.
Yeah.
And
but,
yet,
you know,
no power over his emotions. Oh, Poseidon in therapy. I would pay to see that. And then we get what you were talking about, her perseverance. And I think that this also, you can see it a lot. There's a lot of ways in which we see qualities that Sally Jackson has that Percy also has that we've been identifying. Because Percy also has that perseverance. Like, he might get frustrated.
Oh, absolutely.
But he, like, picks himself up and dusts himself off, and he keeps going. And so she's working odd jobs. She's taking night classes. She gets her high school diploma while she's a single mom. She never complained or got mad. I'm like, you're incredible. Because that's a lot of pressure, and I don't understand.
I literally wrote that in my notes of just, you know, yes, how to be able to be managing all of that while also raising a child on your own.
And like really on your own, because it's not just like dad isn't in the picture. It's like her parents are dead, so there's no grandparents, there's no uncle, like there's no extended family. She's really on her own here. Though I do like to think that maybe, you know, when they're in the water, a sea nymph stops by, waves or something. You know, like maybe she's like getting a little bit of support from the magical realm. But I think that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
It's a lot of weight on her shoulders to never snap or break.
Yes.
You know, or never have a moment of kind of unintentionally letting a little bit out, you know.
Yeah, which would be understandable. Completely. And Percy certainly snaps and breaks, and that's, you know, that's normal. Yeah. We are
especially
humans, and
for a 12-year-old.
You know, like for a 12-year-old dealing with what he's dealing with, and later dealing with what he's dealing with, like understandable, happens to the best of us. But I do think that we see like his perseverance coming through in her backstory. Like she's so hardworking, and I think that we see, you know, his like core of kindness in Sally Jackson that's here. And then it just kills you. That after learning all of that, we have to meet Gabe.
Smelly Gabe,
Ugliano, which I don't think that the ugly part of Ugliano is a
it's not
accident
an accident
there.
Yeah, no.
I don't think it's an accident.
It's very intentional.
We'll get into our like thoughts and feelings on that probably, but kind of a fun play on words, that part.
Yes. The description of him is who was nice the first 30 seconds we knew him, then showed his true colors as a world-class jerk. Yep. This is basically a whole chapter, I feel like, of unpeeling the layers of this is what an abusive person does. Yep. This is how they act, this is how they talk, this is how they 100%. Behave, how they treat you. Even just that being nice for 30, you know, that
that's
initial
so classic.
Niceness is so spot on.
So like I can't even imagine what that would look like, given the fact that we don't ever see him be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so classic. You know, bringing you in with something that seems nice and presentable, and then turning out to be a world-class jerk, as Percy says.
Yep.
And here's the thing: we're gonna learn that Smelly Gabe needs to be smelly, right? That like. Yeah. This is actually protecting Percy from having monsters discover his smell.
Sally very intentionally like chose to be with him because he was so unbelievably smelly that it helped to mask to monsters the smell of Percy Jackson.
You're out in the world. You're young. You're a single mom. But, you know, you're beautiful. You're young. You might want to date around a little bit. And then you're like having to be like, well, but what's the smelliest guy I can find?
Yeah. Just and
rough.
And, you know,
that's rough.
That it's years of it, and even then that she never, through all of that, breaks. That she maintains her kindness, and just it's I can't even imagine.
Nope. I mean, talk about sacrificing for your kid, like the working and the getting the diploma, you know, like that. Yeah, but this is a whole other level of sacrifice.
Yeah.
That and you know, we'll get into it. But what I also like though is that she's not teaching Percy. She manages to straddle the line of like not teaching Percy that you should stay with abusive people without questioning them, which I appreciate because I think that could be the pitfall of this situation is. You know, bringing someone like that into Percy's life. I'm like, was there not a guy who like smelled but wasn't mean? You know, like somewhere in the world there has to be
a ton of cologne.
Somewhere who's like, well, again, back to holes. It's just in my head today. Like, there's an issue with smelly feet. You know, and the baseball player who has smelly feet, and that you know that's sort of the full circle moment with the shoes and all the things. But I'm like. There are people out there who maybe have a pungent odor.
Yeah.
And then maybe you could just accidentally keep misplacing their deodorant for 10 years, you know, who aren't like super terrible people, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we're here. We're stuck with Smelly Gabe, who reeks like moldy garlic pizza wrapped in gym shorts. And we're here again with the descriptions, but this time.
It's so visceral and it's so gross.
Oh, it just makes your skin crawl.
Yeah. And then the next line just kills me when Percy says, between the two of us, we made my mom's life pretty hard. The way Smelly Gabe treated her, the way he and I got along. Yeah. Just like, it's so heartbreaking, you know, because Percy is so aware.
Yes.
And feels...
I hate that he's grouping himself in with Gabe here, though.
Yeah. He feels like he is making his mom's life as hard as Smelly Gabe is, even though they're not even in the same ballpark of each other. That's what I was saying
earlier, like, does he, like, how he views himself, right?
Yeah.
Even though he is a kind person, and he knows, like, he has a sense of right and wrong, and he knows that, because he's like, I shouldn't have ditched Grover, and this and that, you know? Right. But here he's, comparing himself to Smelly Gabe, and I kind of hate that.
I know. Oh, and so then we've got this whole kind of like description of running through the past, his mom's past, introduction of Gabe, and then we're kind of dropped back into the present moment of Percy walking back into his apartment. He's hoping his mom would already be home from work, but instead,
no luck.
Smelly Gabe is in the living room playing poker with his buddies, and it happens a little later on, but I've got a whole rant to go on about these buddies.
100%. One of them is the super.
The super of the apartment building.
Bruh.
We've got a whole nother page before we get to that, but
we do.
I have a whole rant about that.
Okay, first I have a rant.
Go for it. Take it away.
Okay, so my rant is, and again, we can like both have rants and feelings and know that books are written in a certain place and time, and that we can learn and grow. Authors can learn and grow over time. But my rant is that we need to be able to let terrible people be terrible people without having to criticize their appearance as part of reinforcing what makes them terrible.
Yes.
And unfortunately, when we're describing Smelly Gabe, we have a whole section that is fat shaming him, that is talking demeaningly about thrift store clothes, which I almost appreciate as a time capsule, because my mini rant inside of my larger rant, as someone who grew up wearing thrift store clothes, listen, it's a Russian doll of rants. We're peeling back the onion. As someone who grew up wearing thrift store clothes,
went before it was cool and it was
when
trendy.
It wasn't cool.
Yes. Yeah,
you know, we have a nice time capsule here of saying he looked like a tuskless walrus in thrift store clothes, showing us that in the early 2000s, wearing thrift store clothes was not cool, which is how I was perceived growing up, and how thrift store clothes were perceived growing up. Now it's cool. This would never be a line written in a book.
Yeah.
But back to my initial rant. I really think that it does such a disservice to all of us to be using criticisms of people's appearance as shortcuts to talking about their character.
Yep.
Or reinforcing bad character.
No, exactly. Because what it does is it equates a particular body type with like a morality that is like wrong and bad, and it puts on equal, like in this instance, it kind of puts on equal playing field the fact that Gabe is abusive along with the body type that he has. And it's not his body type that is causing the abuse, the reason for it. It's behavior. Not his, it's his behavior. It's who he is as a person, not his body. And we can describe a character by focusing on their character traits, the things that they do that are bad, without then equating that and tying that to what they look like.
And it's almost always reinforcing stereotypes, right? So like
Absolutely.
This reminds me so much of like comparisons, other areas of literature, you know, the Dursleys, like Dudley Dursley, Aunt Marge, like have a really similar situation where like the idea of fat shaming and like gluttony as a concept, or a lot of other really negative stereotypes around fat people. And I use fat here as a neutral descriptor, coming from the fat liberation movement. And I think in this case, like, a similar one is the city of Ember. The mayor in the city of Ember is described in a really similar way. And I think this idea of like being slobby, really focused on like food, you know, being disheveled, also like we're shaming like balding people here. He had 3 hairs on his head combed over his bald scalp. Like, in general, just like a blanket thing that we don't need to like pick on people's appearance or use it as a proxy for talking about their character. And in general, like, I would like to see that be something we see less and less in literature. Yeah. Because it does harm. Like, anyone who relates to these identities or sees themselves physically in this character, it can potentially bring up body shame or other like really hard feelings that are reinforced by societal norms in a way that is super damaging. So let's just all agree not to do this anymore.
and to tie like a character's inherent villainy to their body and how it looks, and for that to be such a common thing that unfortunately does happen a lot, also has an impact. I mean, I know it impacted me as a young reader, and not only how I like kind of perceived myself, but then also how you kind of conceive of and perceive the world around you, because you learn about it not just through living your life, but also through books. And so if every character who's mean, abusive, villainous, or has these kinds of character trait qualities to them is then also described in fat-phobic ways, those two become linked.
Totally.
And that does, I think, a disservice to all of us, and it does harm to all of us.
Real tangible harm. And part of how I know that it was part of like what formulated my own experience was that it wasn't until like unlearning internalized fat phobia later that rereading books, I like realized that this was happening in the books. Like as a kid, I didn't clock this. I didn't notice it. It like wasn't something that really stood out to me. It was just the water that we're all swimming in. And so to me, it was like, yeah, those things go together. And so then you're like, I don't want to be those things. And then you get that like internalized shame that is just based on absolutely nothing but societal oppression. So that's gonna, and you know, we'll have things like this come up again, I'm sure, here and there, but I think Smelly Gabe is like one of the worst examples.
Yeah. And I know that when we meet Clarice, this will kind of come up again too, because for me growing up as a reader, Clarice was the one that stuck in my mind. Like I remember that like you specifically get like her shirt size as like a descriptor of her character, and that was the one for me that I remember really sticking out to me as a kid, and basically being like, oh, to be that shirt size is to be bad because she's mean. And while we do go on a journey where we understand Clarice, and
for sure,
you know,
she gets her hero moments, and
yes, and she kind of has her
she's
redemptive
mean like in this book,
she's
like,
a bully.
In this book, you know, the different tropes or stereotypes can come up in books in different ways, but we definitely have a fat equals mean kind of stereotype that's going across multiple characters in this book. And like you're saying, you know, it like it affected you, like it does do real harm, right? And like kids are also very impressionable, and it's mostly what you're getting in society anyway, and so then this is just like totally reinforcing that. And he is terrible.
He is fully abusive. He is an awful, awful person.
So that's what we can now continue on.
Yes.
And in general, like the other things, like he's smoking cigars in the house. I don't love that. Drinking a lot of beer around a little kid. I don't love that. And the way he's stealing money from Percy, that part might have made me like one of the most angry reactions of all of them. That he's like asking Percy for money for his gambling.
That's the second thing. The first thing he says to him is, so you're home, and then answers the question that Percy asks him of where is his mom. He just says working, and then he goes, you got any cash? And Percy goes, that was it. No, welcome back, good to see you. How's your life been the last 6 months? Just immediately, what can you give me? Essentially, what can I take from you? Cash. Give me money.
And
right
like
now.
When he says, whenever I was home, he expected me to provide his gambling funds. He called that our guy secret. meaning if I told my mom, he would punch my lights out. And I just, the anger that like rushes up inside of me, like, it makes me so angry. I think it also, I don't remember for sure, is maybe our first reference of physical violence, like physical violence from Gabe. So like that, and that is like something that's pervasive in a way that's like really, really frustrating. Now, I'm sure that like on the flip side of what we were saying, I do think that portraying abuse in a way that's very accurate, right? In a way that is how it can happen. And for any kid who is like experiencing a parent that was being physically abusive, that you would see yourself in this book and in this character, and that could be really validating as well, especially by the end of the book.
Oh yes, no, absolutely. I mean, my note on the side of this paragraph was, he's awful, and it's awful to read, and it's also incredibly realistic. You know, even like calling it our guy secret. To anyone listening, if you're a child, you should never have a secret with an adult. No adult who is treating you well, who's treating you in the way that you should be treated, is ever, ever, ever going to tell you that 100%. You and them have your own little secret. That 100%. Should never happen. Or if you're an adult 100%. Listening and you're kind of going, oh, hey, I think maybe when I was a kid, an adult told me, hey, you know, we have our little secret. Like,
not okay.
No, not okay. Should not have happened. Should never happen. But yeah, it is an incredibly, I think, realistic portrayal, and I do think is really important, like you were saying, because this does happen. Kids do go through this, and sometimes the only way that you know that it's wrong is by reading in a book a character who goes through it and tells you that it's wrong and tells you that it shouldn't be happening. You know, sometimes that is the only access to learning that those things should not be happening to you, because the adults who are doing those things to you are not going to be telling you that. They're going to be making you think that this is the way that it should be.
They're the ones saying you have a secret. Yeah, 100%. I think, in general, we need to not be making kids keep secrets about anything, but yes, especially abuse. And then I think, you know, we're kind of like this kind of plot line we're following is like, is Percy going to give Gabe money? And I think it's interesting, like, one trope we're not doing is like, he's not stupid. Gabe is not stupid, because he's like really reasoning it out. He's like, you took a taxi, paid with a 20, you got this much back. But whereas Sally Jackson is not parentifying Percy or adultifying Percy, Gabe has no problem with that. He says, somebody expects to live under this roof, he ought to carry his own weight. Which is right, Eddie? Wild to say to a 12-year-old. A 12-year-old. Completely wild. You can't even legally have a job. That's child labor. And not that Gabe would be opposed to child labor, I don't think. No, he's fully fine with parentifying him. And I also think that his very quick reasoning of guessing how much money Percy has, I think probably really ties in, like, he plays poker a lot. So this is a man that probably does math very quickly, he can all do the time in his head. It also feels very real to this character that he would be able to very quickly go, nope, I know you have money, and this is probably exactly how much you have. Or and this is part of this like manipulative component of abuse, right? And so like we're just seeing it also play out in different ways. And for the record, financial abuse is abuse, no matter like who's doing it to whom. And so here. We have an example of that as well. So he's being physically abusive, emotionally abusive, financially abusive, at least so far in this section. And it sounds like it's time for your rant based on turning the page. Let's go. I'm ready. No, I'm going to take the mic, because we learn after he says, am I right, Eddie, that one of the buddies sitting at this table is Eddie, the super of the apartment building. And I looked up, because never having lived in New York City,
So never having had a super. It might happen in other places, but it's a very classic New York City thing. Classic. I looked up precisely what a super's job is, because I realized I've assumed from media this is what a super's job is. So a super's job is building management, broadly speaking, so taking care of maintenance requests. They are also the liaison between the residents of the building and the landlord / whoever owns it. So basically, when you live there, you're not actually talking to the landlord or whoever owns your company. You're always going through the super. Okay. And so essentially, supers have, I got the gist, they have a lot of power, right? Because they're kind of this like stopping point. Like you don't actually have access to the landlord. You don't have access to whoever owns the building that you're living in. You only have access to the super. And from my understanding, they also live oftentimes.
So they're the gatekeepers to power.
They're the gatekeeper to power. Yeah. And he's sitting at the table of a man who in front of him is being mean and financially abusive to a kid. He says he looked at Percy with a twinge of sympathy and goes, "Come on, Gabe, the kid just got here." Does not say, "Hey, Gabe, you shouldn't ask a 12-year-old for money. You shouldn't say that to a 12-year-old. What are you doing, Gabe? Stop doing that." He goes, "The kid just got here," as if give him a break, a little bit of a break before you start up doing everything that you're going to do.
Wait 10 minutes before you start,
And what I couldn't stop thinking about was, I was like, if this situation happens and in the non-mythological world, right? So it's a regular mom with a regular, not magical child, right? Who's got no superpowers. Yeah. They are screwed because the person abusing them clearly has a relationship with the super to the point where the super is not doing anything about it. And if they wanted to do something about it and maybe try to go to the landlord to be like, "Hey, can you please evict him from here? Like, this is really unsafe."
It wouldn't happen because
it wouldn't happen because they're friends. And it was just making me incensed at and I was just getting very worked up reading it about the fact that there were other adults witnessing this firsthand, seeing it happen, and it's clear that this happens regularly, and they are regular
this isn't the first time Eddie has seen this. No way.
And they do nothing. They sit there, they do nothing, they say nothing. Yeah. And it's just infuriating because that is another thing that is so common. There are so many adults who know when things are happening to kids, who witness it or are aware of it and don't do anything. Don't even check in with the kid. Don't even, don't ever do anything.
Or enabling.
Fully, yes. Yeah. And in this instance, they're just fully enabling because Gabe just repeats, "Am I right?" And then Eddie scowls into a bowl of pretzels, and then the other two guys pass gas in harmony. Yeah. So the other two guys...
that description is really funny. In the midst of being infuriating, passing gas in harmony is kind of hilarious.
It's very funny.
Really funny.
It's absolutely hilarious. But the fact that they don't even get named.
No. No, and they don't say anything.
They literally don't say anything. They don't even get named. They're so basically kind of insignificant. This happens all the time. And then Eddie, someone with the most power living in that building, is sitting at the poker table, not only not doing anything about it, but just witnessing it and essentially kind of rubber stamping Gabe by even sitting at the table and continuing to do that and to have that relationship with Gabe and clearly indicate to Gabe, not only am I not going to do anything, but I'm okay with you doing this.
Totally. Well, and I think as infuriating as it is, it's also just again more accurate portrayals of how abusers stay in power, how they continue to do the behaviors that they're doing. There's almost always an enabler, someone who's complicit, someone who is not saying something, or someone who's just turning away from it. And I think it's also an interesting power dynamic because as much as Eddie has this power in the building, the way that Gabe talks to him gives me the sense that Gabe doesn't treat his friends any better than he treats anyone else. He's just a blanket abusive person. And so the way that he's right, Eddie or whatever, I think that is also a sign that in that dynamic, even though Eddie should have more power in the building, I think like Gabe's the one who's holding that power in the way that he treats other people. Yeah. It's infuriating, and also I appreciate the representation of what this looks like. And I appreciate, Percy, because it could totally be easy to like fawn in this situation, to like people please, to like extricate yourself as quickly as possible. And as someone who is a bit defiant in life, I just like appreciate how Percy really doesn't take things lying down. He takes the wad of he says fine, he takes the wad of dollars out of his pocket, he throws it on the table, and then he says, I hope you lose.
My note was disrespectful king, because I just I love so much. I know I kind of talked about this in a previous episode, but I just love so much how Percy just refuses to bow to or show respect of any kind to people who do not deserve it. He knows. He knows. And I love that so much. And I love that he doesn't put up with anything. And that he knows in this instance, like, I have to fold and give him the money. But I can still get my own little jab, and I can still show that I am not actually showing you any deference. I'm giving you this money, but unwillingly, and I hope you lose it all.
And he's going to do it again later, and I think that's like how you keep your spirit alive in a situation like this, where like you have to find those little acts of resistance that help you to not like crunch completely into yourself and like just be depressed all the time. Like I think this is like part of his method, at least. Like everyone has a different way of survival, but his method, he's got this like fight impulse, and it like comes out in these little ways where like he's gonna be okay at the end of it. Like he's not pushing, he's not starting a fight with the god of war yet, right? But he's always gonna have a word in, and we'll see that like Sally has that too.
I was about to say
I think that's part of their similarities as well.
And I do think we kind of, again, we see like where Percy gets it from. It's that Sally does it in a different way than he does, but it is something that they very much, I think, share in common. Yeah,
for sure. And he even like realizes that. The other thing that makes me really angry is that during the school months, Percy's room is Gabe's quote unquote study, and all of Gabe's stuff is in there. And yes, for the monster element, I guess it's nice that Gabe's smell is covering Percy's smell in his room, because otherwise it'd be easy to find it. But just thinking about your personal space.
I know.
Being infested with a person who's like abusing you and like in this terror, I just like like that's so sus.
The reading it this time, I was just kind of like, it feels like the type of thing where in any other circumstance Sally Jackson wouldn't allow it to happen.
Absolutely.
But she does, because she knows, okay, this is kind of the most concentrated Percy smell that exists. And so I'm gonna let him take over his room, shove stuff in the closet, leave his muddy boots on the windowsill, and kind of get his nasty cologne, cigars, and stale beer smell everywhere.
Just like having waited tables in the past, just like all of those, like I can just it flashes me right back, and I'm just like, I don't ever need to smell beer like that ever again. Like, imagine that's where you sleep. Like, no thank you.
No, awful, absolutely awful.
I did think though that the use of home sweet home to describe this, after talking about how bad it smells, saying home sweet home is kind of funny. It's like
yes
little irony or something going on there.
Yeah.
And then he says that Gabe's smell was almost worse than the nightmares about Mrs. Dodds and the sound of the shear snipping the yarns, which is like, first of all, that's terrible smell, because those nightmares have been really, really bad. Like basically Gabe's smell is worse than PTSD is what I'm hearing, which is like super intense.
Yeah. Also, I think this is the first time we really get kind of the first comparison. I think there was one a little later. It was more strong, but the Gabe is essentially a human monster. He's not a mythological one. He's a human one.
And his superpower is smelling really, really bad.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, that we're also kind of like, Percy's more in a mind frame of like these things actually happen, because we've been kind of tracking that. So I think that's interesting. And I think this chapter is where like we really finally like pull the wool off, you know, fully. Yes. But it, you know, it's not actually worse. And as soon as Percy thinks this, his legs are feeling weak, and he's remembering Grover's look of panic. And this is where he feels like someone or something that was looking for him right now. And I just wrote beside it, me too. I wrote, you are being hunted.
You are correct that something is coming for you.
Yes. Intuition on point. And yeah, I think, and interestingly, he says maybe pounding its way up the stairs, growing long, horrible talons. So he's also like still thinking about like that transformation, which is really interesting, because like we know that we'll just keep seeing through the book human seeming people kind of transform.
Yeah. But then he hears his mom's voice say Percy, and she opens the bedroom door, and all his fears melted. And I just went, my angel Sally, just able to make all of his fears melt away just by walking through the door.
Word.
And he literally says, my mother can make me feel good just by walking into the room.
Yeah.
That's her magic. That's her
so
magic.
Sweet. It is her magic. I'm telling you, Sally is magical.
She's magical in her own way. Yeah.
She's a Disney princess, so she's got to have a little bit of magic. We need to figure out her animal sidekick at some point, but we can continue that.
Yes,
that's true. We can keep our eyes out.
Okay.
We keep talking about these like descriptions that we really like. I'm very interested in her eyes, and we'll circle back to that actually, but her smile is as warm as a quilt.
Yeah, what a beautiful description.
I'm like, that sounds like a song lyric.
Yeah.
And I love it. So beautiful.
And when she looks at me, it's like she's seeing all the good things about me, none of the bad.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love that. And it's so in contrast to how we know other people see him. And I think it's such a strength for him. Just to have this, and you know, when they're talking, like, she doesn't even mention him getting expelled. Gabe has mentioned him having a bad report card come in or something. She's not mentioning that.
No, she's just wanting to know how he's doing. That's all. Yeah.
And I just, was her little boy doing all right? And I think that that's just what every kid needs. That's what everybody needs. That's what I need. Just am I doing all right? Are you doing all right? Like, that's just what we need. Like, that should be the focus of all relationships. So I love that. And then I also think it's like, she is the exact opposite of Smelly Gabe. So like, she couldn't smell better. Like, she smells like candy. And when you're a kid, I feel like there's, you couldn't pick a better smell. It's just like, it sounds like yummy and delicious candy. And like, you're just enveloped in it with her warm quilt smile. And it's just, it just sounds lovely. It's the exact opposite of Gabe. It also, though, brought up a question for me, which is, do we get a description of what heroes smell like to monsters?
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
Because I couldn't remember.
Oh, I can't remember. I talked about the fact that heroes smell.
Yes.
I can't remember.
I want to look out for it. Because I'm like, we're getting all these really sensory, like visceral descriptions of how everybody's smelling. And then smell is going to be really, really important when it comes to like how monsters track heroes. I'm like, does one smell like potato chips and another one smells like Hershey's and another, you know what I mean? Like, or is it totally different? Like, monsters aren't that into our food. I don't know, but I was just really curious, like, do they all, is it distinct? Like, it seems like it would be maybe distinct. Is there a similarity? What do monsters actually like? So I have all these questions about.
We'll have to pay attention. See if we ever get that.
You know, what demigods smell like to monsters.
Yeah.
And then, you know, to top it off, she just brings a huge bag of candy.
I know.
Home with her. And you're just like, fabulous. Love it. As if you could get any better.
Yeah. I love the description of Percy attacking the blueberry sour strings, you know, as a way of, like, not, oh, I dove right, oh, you know, I started eating them, I attacked them, you know, just, like, ravenous.
Well, you know how I see that, though? I think that he had so much, like, fight response from talking to Gabe that, like, this was his release. Like, he attacked, instead of attacking Gabe, he attacked the blueberry sour strings.
Yeah. And this is our first, we'll get the whole blue and the blue backstory, but I noted our first little mention of, you know, something blue.
Blue.
And then, you know, she's like just asking him if he's okay, how he's doing. And then when Percy says I told her she was smothering me into layoff and all that, I was like, Percy, stop being a 12-year-old.
I'm like, Percy. Like, I get it. But you have the best mom ever.
I know. And I was like, and I know you do appreciate your mom, but I was like, stop being 12 and just like, be able to be like, I love you so much.
But he is 12. I think when he says secretly, I was really, really glad to see her. I think the thing is, Sally Jackson can see through anything.
Yes.
She knows. It's kind of like, you know, sometimes my cat, Chewy, I have two cats, Charlie and Chewy, and sometimes Chewy is a menace to society and is kind of wild and kind of wriggly and meowing his head off or whatever it is. And I hug him and he wriggles like he doesn't want it. But really, he settles in and he's a happy boy. And I think just sometimes it's that energy where you're like, I need to fight it a little bit. But like, I trust you also to stay with me and keep loving me anyway.
Yes.
And that's just sometimes how it goes.
Yeah.
Just a regular little boy. But then Gabe, like, this is such a whiplash chapter. Okay, because we're like,
truly,
we're like, everything's terrible. I hate everything. And we're like, oh my God, it's the best time ever. I love this. I'm like in a meadow with sun on me, and it's just like the best thing ever. And then we're back to like, Gabe, hey Sally, how about some bean dip, huh? And you're like, you immediately tense up. And you're back in your fight response, and you're like, I cannot with you. We were having a nice moment. I forgot you existed for a second. But I do like this line. My mom is the nicest lady in the world. She should have been married to a millionaire, not to some jerk like Gabe. That's so sweet. Like, I love that Percy wants the best for his mom.
Yes, I also thought it was really funny that what's the best thing, like, what's ideal for my mom? Millionaire. No description of like, oh, like,
as if really millionaires are like nice people.
I know. But it felt very 12-year-old to be like, my mom's with a guy who sucks. So who's
always asking me for money.
Right.
A millionaire wouldn't be asking me for money. Again, just like the flawless kid logic, right? Like,
flawless.
A big thing I don't like about my stepdad is he's asking me for money all the time. If I had a stepdad who had millions of dollars,
he wouldn't ask
that
for
issue
money.
would go away. We don't need to worry about like
Well, and then we learn in just a little bit that it seems like Gabe utilizes finances and money as a means of control. So, you know, 100%. I think Percy kind of imagining a millionaire is also probably imagining that freedom from someone who utilizes finances to control.
Also, Percy's raised by like a single mom who's having to work several jobs and like get her college diploma later. And so I think there's an element to like anyone who grew up without money where you're just like, the thing that would solve everything is money. It's like, of course, that's like what it feels like when you don't have it. So I think
because the reality is, people love to say money doesn't solve problems. Money can solve a lot of problems.
For sure.
Money can solve a lot of
when
problems.
You live in a world, in a society that is driven by money, that is driven by a capitalist system, then like, it matters if you have money or not. Like, that does make a difference. And when you're a kid and that's how you grew up, like, and you live in New York where you can see like really drastic wealth disparities. Like, it's not like you grew up somewhere where everyone was in the same socioeconomic bracket or so. And that's kind of like the normal, like he's going like the parents of the kids at the boarding school are probably millionaires because like they have these summer homes and yachts and whatever. So like Percy is super acutely aware of this. So it makes total sense. It's just
absolutely.
You know, there could be other challenges that might arise. But I totally get it. And here is where, you know, Percy borrows his mom's optimism.
Yeah.
He comes in with a positive reframe. And I was just like, you know, I love a positive reframe. I have a positive anything you throw at me, I can have a positive reframe for. I have to stop myself sometimes. But, you know, he's almost talking himself into it. He's like, I'd lasted the whole year this time. I made some new friends. I'd done pretty well in Latin. You know, it hadn't really been as bad as the headmaster said when the fights. He almost convinces himself.
Until the trip to the museum. Which I think reading that paragraph where he is kind of almost convincing himself that, like Yancey was actually pretty great. I think that just shows how powerful, like, one great teacher and one good friend can be.
Totally.
Like,
and a good mom, because I think that's, like, the foundation.
Yes, that is, yes. But that, like, because you get the sense that Percy didn't have close friends at any of these other schools that he was at, and he also didn't have kind or supportive teachers. And so I think his ability to even kind of find that reframing, kind of almost like find the positive spin on everything that happened, I think really shows how deeply impactful it can be to just have like one good friend your age and one adult who treats you with kindness and respect and, like, in a setting where you're not receiving that from everybody else.
And we like know that affects health outcomes and all kinds of mental health outcomes. Like just to have like one adult that you can have a positive experience with, or like one friend, like that can make a huge difference when other things are stacked against you. So, but until he thinks about the trip to the museum. And I love this line where
oh my gosh,
Percy says that his mom's eyes tugged at my conscience, trying to pull out the secrets. And here's another. So just so we're tracking, because I think that she has eye magic. Is what I'm going to be arguing today. Just on the page before, it says her eyes sparkle and change color in the light. Now, there are mere mortals out there, unless they're not, and I just don't know this, whose eyes might change color in the light. Like that's a thing, right? That's a thing. But her eyes are tugging at his conscience, trying to pull out the secrets, and they're going to keep doing things.
And they're going to turn green later.
They're going to turn green. And I don't know what color they were before that. I don't remember. But I don't know. I'm thinking we have some eye magic here, but we'll keep going. We'll keep tracking it. As
also, just, you know, regardless of her eye magic or not, just what a description of how it is when you look at someone who knows that you're hiding something and they just like want you to tell them just because like they love you and they care about you, and they're just kind of like, please, I know you're hiding, so, you know, like just please share with me. Just what a description. Because then she asked, did something scare you? Like she immediately knows that whatever he's hiding is something scary and frightening.
That's what I'm saying earlier. Like she totally can see through to his, like she can read his emotions like so clearly, right? Like she definitely has that ability. But the idea of eyes tugging at a conscience, I thought that was a really good description.
Incredible description. And then he replies when she asked, did something scare you? He says, no, Mom. Then he says, I felt bad lying, and that he wanted to tell her, but I thought it would sound stupid. And I just was like, the gaslighting worked.
I know,
you know,
it's so sad.
That he thought it would sound stupid to tell her any of this because it just got so in his head that, and because he even refers to it later as a hallucination, you know, and so it just, my heart broke because I was like, otherwise he would have, I think, shared potentially, you know, with his
I
mom.
think he doesn't want to scare her, but I think that given that they both are aware of, we're going to kind of hear the descriptions of like weird things that's happened to him in the past, like Yeah, I think that if he hadn't been so thoroughly gaslit, he might have told her, because he really is
even
going
just
back
something.
and forth of like, this feels real, this feels like a hallucination, this feels real, you know, back and forth and back and forth.
Even just kind of being like, oh yeah, I had like another weird scary thing happen with the teacher, you know? I think even just communicating that, I think he would have been more likely to do had he not like had a semester of people telling him, you're crazy, you're making it up.
Yes, you're like under stress and imagining things. Yeah. And then she says, even though, you know, she knows that he's holding back, she doesn't push him, and she says, I have a surprise for you. We're going to the beach. And I think
this is very silly, but the song my brain plays every time is, let's go to the beach, let's go get away. You know that song? Anyways, it's just as soon as I read it, it's the only thing
it was in your head
that my brain could play. Anyways, sorry, continue.
No, that's okay. I think that, like I was saying earlier, now we're here. I think this like feeling of like childhood nostalgia of like a place that you go back, that you have fond memories of, you have a good time at, like, and it makes sense for the area they're in that it might be the beach, I just think it's sweet, and it immediately brought up like the feelings of like what that childhood nostalgia can feel like when when you have a place like that.
Yeah. And I love that, you know, Sally obviously knows that he's been expelled, that he had this really rough end to his semester. And so I love that she immediately planned for it. The second he gets home, we're going to our favorite place, you know,
I think it's
that
lovely.
you're basically going to spend an hour in the apartment and then we're out of here. And I love that was, her plan was basically like, I'm like self-care for me, for you, for everybody. Like, we're going to take care of ourselves.
Opposite of a lot of parenting that would be like, you got a bad report card, so you're gonna be grounded.
Get to go to your favorite place.
It would be seen like, oh, I'm rewarding someone for whatever, for getting expelled or for not getting good grades, and it's like she A, knows why that happens, but B, like, honestly, even if Percy wasn't a demigod and like she would be the same, like she would still be kind to him. And I think, you know, having her plan this also probably, like, it's also very wise, because I don't think putting Percy dealing with everything he's dealt with in the same place as Smelly Gabe for a few, like, that would have been asking for trouble, like, just based on that initial interaction. But
that's a powder keg about to explode.
It really is. So anyway, I think that having that, like you're saying, it's so thoughtful, it's so sweet. It's like, prioritize self-care, and I'm like, not only am I not mad at you, I'm gonna like bring you somewhere that we both love, and we're gonna reconnect. And like, gosh, isn't that like what you need when something's going wrong in your life? It's just like to reconnect with someone you love in a peaceful place.
After such an incredibly difficult and challenging semester, it truly is what he needs, is to go to a place where he probably feels the safest, with a person that he feels the safest with, you know, like, that's really what he needs. It's probably also what she needs, like, having gone 6 months without having seen him.
I'm sure that's so hard for her.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I just love that was obviously her immediate plan as soon as, I'm sure, she heard that he got expelled, was, we're going to Montauk.
I love it. And then we get another frustrating, like, financial abuse kind of piece where they hadn't been the last 2 summers because Gabe said there wasn't enough money. And then he comes in and growls, which I guess back to him being a human monster. He's growling, which monsters are described a lot in the books as growling. Bean dip, Sally, didn't you hear me? And then Percy makes this pretty explicit. He says, I wanted to punch him. Valid. But I met my mom's eyes and understood she was offering me a deal. Be nice to Gabe for a little while, just until she was ready to leave for Montauk. Then we would get out of here. And so it's like, Percy's also like, yeah, that's what she's doing. Like, he's aware that that's the plan. And I think we also have, you know, Sally's using honey. I was on my way, honey. And I don't think she means it either. I don't think people using this word are really meaning it in these books at all.
And I do that little, like, deal of be nice to him, and basically not only then will we leave, but then we will be able to leave. Totally. If you're not nice to him, we're not going to be able to leave. Is, I think, also, it just was another moment where I just reading it was like, this is an incredibly realistic portrayal of what it is like to live with someone who's abusing you. Totally. Those kind of like those silent compromises, those silent negotiations of I do this or I don't do that, so that hopefully I can get, you know, this tiny thing that I'm asking for, you know, which is 3 days at the beach.
Well, and if I restrain like my natural reaction, my authentic feelings, you know, then maybe I can like get a little bit of peace from this person. And like, again, not how anyone should be like living or being treated. Like this is not okay. And I think, you know, Percy's like, I knew it. He won't let us go. And I think they're like, this is
after
where
Percy says the trip, you mean you were serious about that?
Yeah.
Which is another classic thing to have like agree to something and then be like, what, you're serious? Like, no, you're not actually, you know, like you weren't serious when you said that.
And I think this is like the tightrope that Sally Jackson is walking right here, because this is a potential pitfall where Percy's phrasing is, he won't let us go. Right. So it's like Percy is aware that Gabe is abusing both his mom and him. And I think that like Sally walks it, but there's a pitfall to this plan where like this could really mess Percy up in a way of like, if he sees his mom as like not standing up to Gabe, and he like is in this dynamic that like, and he is in this, like, obviously he's getting affected by being in this dynamic, but I think that this is like evidence of where that's affecting him, and like how he's setting up this like him versus me and my mom, and like we're the ones who don't have the power here.
Yeah, because that phrasing of he won't let us go, as if Gabe even has the right to determine where they go, if they can go, you know, that Gabe has power and control over their movement, over essentially their ability to like leave the apartment and go where they want to.
And now we've checked off another. For anyone who doesn't know the power and control wheel, Google the power and control wheel. It shows you all the forms of abuse, and now we've checked off another one on that wheel here.
But yeah, she does. She walks this incredibly fine line. And the other thing that I found interesting was she calls him Gabriel. She doesn't call him Gabe. And that really, because Percy calls him Smelly Gabe. And I kind of get the sense that like everyone else calls him Gabe. And even his dialogue is written as Gabe repeated, you know, but she calls him Gabriel, which it was interesting to me. You know,
it is interesting.
Like, it felt like a slight way of her kind of being like, you don't get your nickname, you get your government name. Yeah. You know, like,
your identification. Name. And, you know, she's doing her own compromise here. She's going to make 7-layer dip as kind of like a trade. And well, and then we find out that the money from the trip comes out of her clothes budget, which is just ridiculous. Like, does Gabe have a clothes budget? Because I feel like, you know, or a poker budget, or a gambling budget,
or a beer budget.
I don't think he does. I don't think so. No. I think that Sally is the one with the with the tight budget being controlled here. And then we get a yes, honey again. And again, just like, I'm going to look, but I'm curious if anyone in the books is going to say honey in like
a
genuinely like kind way. Because so far it's just really not. And then, I just love this next part is actually quite satisfying to read, because we're talking about his car. We all know what's going to happen to the car. But I just love it, because he's like, you won't take my car anywhere, but here, there and back. And he's like, it's a little bit later, but he's like, don't do anything to the car, don't scratch the car, don't. And I'm just like, I'm like rubbing my hands together, like, I'm so excited, let's go.
This is truly the book where you really get like revenge fantasy.
Oh, for sure.
But actually acted out on
the
Gabe,
comeuppance game.
Like you really like karma really comes back around.
Absolutely.
For Gabe. 100%, and it's incredibly satisfying because also you don't always get that revenge fantasy fully played out.
No, you really don't. But like this is a book. Why not?
yeah.
Why not do it?
That's the whole point of a revenge fantasy. Is that it's a fantasy. It's not enacted in real life. So.
And then we have to at least talk about one more dynamic of abuse, and then oh my gosh, I can't wait till we can stop talking about it. Yeah. Which is when Gabe says, and maybe if you hurry up with stuff on your dip, and maybe if the kid apologizes for interrupting my poker game. And if someone is abusing you and then having you be the one to apologize.
Yeah.
That is not okay. Yes. We're just like a broken record here. It is not okay. Yeah. It is not okay. It is not okay. Yeah. But it's another classic maneuver of like, I'm going to be terrible. I'm not going to apologize. And then I'm going to force you to apologize for something you didn't do.
And that's not actually apology worthy.
No, 100%.
Like walking through the door of your apartment that you live in while someone's playing a poker game is not something you need to apologize for.
Yeah, no. And if I turn back here, Gabe is the one who speaks first. So, like, all Percy does is walk through the door, and then Gabe says, so you're home.
Literally.
So, Gabe interrupted the poker game. Let's just just for factual reference here. Yeah. But then, Percy, snarky as
little
ever.
Revenge fantasy moment.
Love this line. He says, maybe if I kick you in your soft spot, I thought, and make you sing soprano for a week, which also just feels really New York. like he's been watching some TV shows or something. But we love the revenge fantasy.
This might not be accurate because I haven't ever watched The Sopranos.
Sure,
but it feels a little bit like Godfather Sopranos. Like I'm totally sing, like a soprano for a week. Like
yeah. Like we definitely have that vibe. Yeah. So I just Percy has that like fight response still going strong inside of him, and
But then right after that he says, "But my mom's eyes warned me not to make him mad," which is again another. It's that like silent communication that happens all the time between the two people who, or whoever the people, whatever number of people it is, but who are experiencing the abuse. And then he gets angry. He's like, why did she put up with this guy? I wanted to scream. Why did she care what he thought? And I do think this is, I think we meet Percy at the point at which, if the events of this book didn't unfold the way that they did, I think regardless, like, the relationship with Gabe would need to end, because I think we're kind of reaching the end of that very fine line where
it's affecting his relationship with his mom too.
Yes. Where like if I think they had actually gone another 6 months to a year of Gabe being in their lives, like I think it would have kind of crossed that threshold.
Totally.
But I do think this is
Percy's
kind
getting
of the end
old
of the
enough
rope.
to fight back, like big enough to fight back in a way that could be really dangerous for everybody involved. Also, this is another like very very common, very natural dynamic is like sometimes people who were raised by abusive parents actually are more mad at the parent that like wasn't the abuser but like didn't stop it. And I think here we get like a glimpse into that feeling. Obviously, again, it's like Sally's navigating this the best that she can, and and like Percy's getting that valid reaction of like, why is she doing this? And like in this case there's a magical reason, like there's a otherworld magical reason, but it's just such a thing, and it makes sense to like have feelings toward the parent who's not stopping, because in the Sally is in that role at times. Like in this moment it can feel like there's that complicit enabling kind of experience of like fawning that she's doing, which is also a very normal reaction to abuse.
Absolutely.
But for the kid who is like the truly helpless person in the situation, it's super valid to have feelings about that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think here he's having both feelings, like, fully on behalf of himself and also on behalf of his mom. Like, I think he's both mad for him, like, why, kind of that, like you were saying, that why is she not stopping this? Why is this still continuing to happen? And then I think also on behalf of her, I think he's mad, like, why is she not stopping it for herself? She deserves better than this, you know?
Yeah. She deserves to be
with a millionaire. And so I think it's a millionaire.
A millionaire.
And so, yeah, I think it also, like, even in this very incredibly valid moment of anger on behalf of himself, to me, it came across as he's, like, angry on behalf of both of them.
Totally. Yeah. You know? That's that, like, him and us feeling that he had earlier too. And
I do think it really, I think it kind of, I think it speaks volumes about both Percy and Sally and how he has raised him, that despite his kind of how he clearly kind of, you know, feels bad about elements of himself, you know, like he doesn't have like 100%, I'm a rock star, I'm incredible, everything about me is amazing, that he fundamentally knows that neither of them deserve this treatment.
Yeah, and I think a sense of self-worth, really, for sure.
Yeah, is really incredible because, I mean, Gabe has been a part of their lives for a very long time, and it can oftentimes happen where you reach a point where you go from believing that you don't deserve it to believing that you do. And I think that it really speaks kind of volumes about Sally walking that incredibly fine line, how she raised Percy prior to Gabe coming into their lives, that he's still able to hold on to, I know that I don't deserve this, and I know that my mom doesn't deserve this, and that he doesn't...
not to mention, like, he's being told by teachers. He's been told by a lot of people that he shouldn't have self-worth. So I think it's it's really incredible that he still does, you know, and that that he knows that teachers aren't treating him correctly, and that he knows that Gabe is not treating him correctly, and that things should be different. Like, it's really, really incredible. And again, kind of stepping outside of the world of the book itself, I think it's incredibly powerful for kids to read. A kid having a real sense of self-worth and knowing, I do not deserve to be treated poorly. Like, I may have made some mistakes. I may have messed things up at some points in my life. That does not mean that I deserve to be treated poorly by teachers, by, you know, semi-parental figures, because he's technically that, being his stepfather, you know. I think it's very powerful to have, because that message, because I think it does come through, you know, like his defiance, because he has the self-worth to feel defiant. I think that messaging really does come through, and I think it's a very powerful thing for all kids, you know, to read, especially kids who can really relate and have been in that situation. 100%. And we get, you know, he doesn't say the really snarky thought that he has.
No.
But he's still here. He can't help it. He says, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm really sorry I interrupted your incredibly important poker game. Please go back to it right now. And I'm just like, I love the sarcasm. I love the snark. I love the pettiness. I just wrote, nice, Percy. Yes, I think, well done. But then it's interesting. Gabe's eyes narrowed. His tiny brain was probably trying to detect sarcasm in my statement. And I think it's interesting because we've, at least in numbers, Gabe is pretty smart. He's pretty good at manipulating people. But you know what? Not everyone can hear sarcasm. Yeah. And it seems like Gabe's not able to, and we love that for Percy, because it gives him a way to have some resistance without that putting him in danger, and I appreciate that. And Gabe says, whatever, and goes back to his game.
And then Percy's mom thanks him, says, thank you, Percy. And then says, once we get to Montauk, we'll talk more about whatever you've forgotten to tell me, okay? And
she has not forgotten.
She's not letting it go.
No.
She is like, I've locked in on the fact that there's clearly something important that we need to talk about. And we will be returning.
And it's interesting because the same anxiety in her eyes to Percy seems like the fear that he'd seen in Grover. And so we're still, like, the ominous thread is percolating. We haven't let that
very
go.
much. And the first, like, when he has that direct comparison, then also says, as if my mom too felt an odd chill in the air. We really get this first kind of little hint of Sally's plugged in, you know, and not only is she plugged in, but a little, I feel like, almost hint of the fact that she can kind of see through the mist.
Yep.
You know, and she can't, she can't be fooled by it, and she knows
she
of
has
the mythological
eye magic.
world.
We'll return to that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
But then her smile returned, and I figured I must have been mistaken. And I was like, gosh, I just, you know, it's so funny because this is technically only chapter 3, but I think reading it so much more slowly than I ever have in a long time, I'm just, on behalf of Percy, I'm like,
the
gosh,
gaslighting
we
is so
need to stop.
Well, because we keep saying,
we just
like,
need to tell him
he's been raised to trust himself, like, he's got this intuition, like, he has self-worth, like, it is, it's so frustrating that that's getting undermined here. In such a way. But you know what? We're going to get to our breaking point soon anyway. We're going to know some things. I'm very excited because this is, like, the last chapter before we get to finally get some, like, meaty, let's get into the world. The next two are going to be so exciting. So we are ready to leave. We are ready to go to Montauk. We got some really great stuff about the 78 Camaro, which I just thoroughly enjoyed. You know, not a scratch on this car. Brain Boy is an interesting thing to call.
I know.
Percy.
It's like, he says it earlier in the chapter, and I kind of noted that that's another one of his, like, insults and digs is, like, calling him Brain Boy because he knows that he struggles academically in school. You know, is fully just another way in which he's really kind of digging into just how can he emotionally, you know,
and like
verbally,
based on like someone's insecurities or someone's like challenges, or, you know, and kind of highlighting them is very, very classic. And, you know, he's complaining about it the whole time, but he's like, not one little scratch. And I just wrote, just wait. Like, I am anticipating this so hard.
Well, and like Percy says after that, like, I'd be the one driving. I'm 12, you know? It's like, why on earth, Gabe, are you talking to the 12-year-old about not getting a scratch on the car?
I mean, I will say, though, it's a little bit like, I do imagine that Gabe has picked up a little bit that, like, bad things happen to Percy or happen around Percy. Like, I do think this sort of, like, there are monsters out to get Percy. It's hard to, like, escape that reality. And, like, Gabe doesn't actually know that, so fully not okay.
It felt like in the same vein of where he was like, if you're living under this roof, you have to pull your weight.
Totally.
But he's 12, being like, don't scratch the car. I'm 12. I'm not going to drive
it. Has any control over that.
I can't do, like, I'd have to purposefully key your car otherwise.
Yeah, which like, honestly I want to, but I won't. I know. But he that really, you know, shows up because he says if a seagull so much as pooped on his paint job, he'd find a way to blame me. And that's the underlying point here.
Yeah, that's he's abusive, and no matter what happens, he is going to find a way to make it Percy's fault so that he can punish Percy. Yeah. The other thing that I found interesting when Gabe is like groaning and griping, he specifically says he kept griping and groaning about losing her cooking, and then more importantly his 78 Camaro for the whole weekend. Yeah. But just it really like that specific line about losing Sally's cooking, like I think it really felt like just kind of like a classic, like how you'd kind of describe like a 1950s or you know, like older kind of from a previous generation, though it still happens today, type dynamic in a relationship.
Anyone who's in a very like traditional heterosexual relationship.
Yeah. Of just like it's a weekend. Like
it's 3 days.
It's 3 days and you are a grown adult.
Yeah. You're an adult.
You know, to be like, anyways, that just also really stood out to me because also the fact that it's, oh, I'm losing your cooking and my car. You know, it's not, oh, I'm going to miss you. I hope you have a nice time.
Of course not. Of course not.
Because he sucks, you know, he's an awful person. It's, oh, I'm going to lose what you provide me with, which is your cooking, and then my car, which I love more than anything. Right, you know,
right.
It's
definitely
like,
more than other people.
Don't care about you as a person.
No,
you
know,
like,
for sure not.
I'm not going to be missing you as a person, just missing the service that you provide to me.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And then I think this was really interesting because we talked about this last chapter of what symbol, what hand gesture that Grover makes, and we confirmed that it is the claw. It was just described differently in the last chapter.
It was, yes.
And here
but he does specifically say, I made the hand gesture I'd seen Grover make on the bus.
A sort of warding off evil gesture, a clawed hand over my heart, then a shoving movement toward Gabe, which is how I always picture it. And it's like, okay, so that is the gesture. It was just described differently. And in this case, the screen door slammed shut so hard it whacked Gabe in the butt and sent him flying up the staircase as if he'd been shot from a cannon, which is like a great description.
Incredible
and again,
description.
but we're having to make it make sense, right? Because it's Percy. So maybe it was just the wind or some freak accident with the hinges. But he didn't stay long enough to find out. He got in the Camaro and told his mom to step on it. I'm like, yeah,
he
that's
knew.
the move.
He was like,
that's
we need to get out of Dodge right now. We gotta go.
That is the move.
Yeah.
And then we're here.
We have arrived at Montauk.
Oh, we can finally stop whiplashing between happiness and wow.
We can like take a breath along with the characters.
We are putting Gabe in our rearview mirror of our Camaro.
Very much.
We are moving forward.
Yes. And so we arrive at their house, which it's described as a little pastel box with faded curtains half sunken into the dunes.
I know, love that description.
I know. There was always sand in the sheets and spiders in the cabinets.
Don't love that part.
Most of the time, the sea was too cold to swim in. But it also felt very kind of classic of Sally and Percy to make a kind of rundown thing beautiful. You know, like it feels very classic Sally Jackson for her to find the beauty in a rundown place with sand in the sheets and spiders in the cabinets, for her to still make it this like their kind of escape. Their getaway, their little safe place that they both love going to.
And we learned that they'd been going since he was a baby. So that's also really sweet. Like, Poseidon is hung up on Sally, but I think Sally's equally hung up on Poseidon. Like,
oh yes, yes. Well, because then we find out going back that it was the place that she had met Poseidon, and so it's definitely, I think they're both kind of holding on to those feelings for sure, and
makes total sense that she would meet him at the beach, you know?
Yes.
Summer loving. Like, that's where we're at. And it's interesting, too. He says, as we got closer to Montauk, she seemed to grow younger. Years of worry and work disappearing from her face, and her eyes turned the color of the sea because they are magical.
Because she's a Disney princess.
Because she is a Disney princess with magic eyes. And yeah, I think...
Who can see... I think her magic eye power is that she can see the truth.
That's what I'm saying. She can see through the mist. Yeah. She can see people's emotions.
But that's what I mean. I think fundamentally she can see the truth. She can see the truth of a person, how they're feeling, who they are as a person. She can see the truth of the mythological world exists.
I have convinced you that she has magic eyes.
I never did not believe you. I was just like, what is the magic of her eyes? And
what is magic eyes?
Which is a fair question. That she can see the truth.
No, I agree. I like that.
That is
her
magic.
That explanation. And and I think that eyes turning the color of the sea sounds so pretty. Like, I want to see those.
Oh my gosh, beautiful.
Those sound pretty.
Oh, beautiful. Oh yeah, yeah. And so they arrive, they open all the windows, they go through their usual cleaning routine. You know, I love that they just, even with that, you like, you know that they have these little traditions. They have these things that are just the two of them. Even the fact that they have a cleaning routine that you can kind of imagine at this point they can probably do without even talking. You know, it's like they both makes it
nostalgic, like ritual and routine. Like it just, you know, in a safe place with people you love. Like that's such a vibe. It's so nostalgic. And then we get. Oh, and my other question about the eyes. Okay, my other question about the eyes, real quick, is basically what I was wondering is like. I don't remember exactly how Rachel Elizabeth Dare's eyes are described. And I don't remember exactly how Luke's mom, pre all the things, eyes are described. Right, and so I'm basically wondering if there's anything in common that characters who can see through the mist have with like eye color or changing eye color. Anyway, I want to pay attention to that because I'm curious about it.
Yeah, we'll pay attention.
But let's talk about blue. I wore blue today. For anyone who's not watching, I wore blue in honor of this chapter because we get the blue. I love the blue. They're feeding blue corn chips to the seagulls. They're munching on blue jelly beans, blue saltwater taffy. And here is where, first of all, Percy breaks the fourth wall again. I guess I should explain the blue food, which is super fun. And I was just like,
another, we're in the reality TV show of this. We've cut to the confessional. And Percy's we've just watched the scene of them walking along the beach, feeding the seagulls, munching, and then we cut to Percy and he's going, okay, so I guess I should explain the blue food.
Oh, it just makes it so good. I need this. And here is also where, you know, she may not raise her voice. She may be fawning a lot of the time, but she stands up for herself.
Absolutely. So we learn that the reason why blue food is a constant with Sally Jackson is because Gabe had once told her that there was no such thing as blue food. And they had this fight, which Percy says seemed like a really small thing at the time. But ever since, she has gone out of the way to eat blue. Baked blue birthday cakes, mixed blueberry smoothies, bought blue corn tortilla chips, brought home blue candy from the shop. And he says this, along with keeping her maiden name Jackson, was proof that she wasn't totally suckered by Gabe. She did have a rebellious streak, just like Percy. And I think this is her way of like fighting back every single day, you know, of it's her, like her acts of resistance are being like, you tried to tell me there's no such thing as blue food,
which like
there literally
wild,
ridiculous.
Absolutely bizarre ridiculous. Thing to say.
And so she, you know, in that kind of in her own defiant way, then goes, okay, so we're gonna have a house full of blue food.
Exclusively eating blue food. Which I love. And it does show for Percy, like, this is, you know, we're not just like living in this reality without like thinking about it. It's not just like the status quo.
It's her kind of way, like, to, I think, show Percy that the two of them are living in the shared reality of Gabe is a very mean man. I think it's her little way.
Like he is
wrong, of kind of showing Percy, like, making him, I think, showing him that he is not crazy or wrong for thinking these
Sally
things.
is not gaslighting Percy at any point.
Yes. And I think that's her little way of every single day being like, you are not wrong for thinking that he is wrong. Because he is wrong, and I'm going to prove it every day by having blue food constantly.
Which I love. I love it. I love it. That kind of act of resistance. And then it gets dark. They make a fire. They're roasting hot dogs. They're roasting marshmallows. Like, we're back to that like nostalgic, cozy, like the place you retreat to vibes. And I love it. She's telling stories about when she was a kid and the book she wants to write someday. Like, I can just imagine lying back and that just being the most peaceful, lovely feeling.
Yeah. And this is that piece that I was talking about a little earlier in this episode about how the fact that she's able to share stories from before her parents died in the plane crash. And so, you know, not only be able to talk about that and share that with Percy, but clearly have it in this kind of lovely, cozy, warm way. But then also to talk about the book she wants to write as soon as she has enough money to quit the candy shop. Not in this like, oh, I've kind of become resentful over this lost dream that I was going to pursue and had to give up. And in no way you know, makes Percy feel like, oh, she can't pursue this dream because I exist.
Yep.
That she's just able to share, you know, like she's able to be vulnerable in that kind of way and have that really lovely, open, honest, very communicative relationship that she has with Percy that also still very much keeps them in their proper dynamics of I am mom, you are
and also
child.
Like having goals with having challenges, because like Percy has so many challenges, and so it's like modeling you can have a lot of things stacked against you and you can still have goals, and like,
and she's modeling like
time,
not giving up on those goals.
Exactly,
you
like,
know, she's
just
modeling,
takes time sometimes.
It's
never too late.
Like, exactly, and that you can have setbacks, like you can experience what she did of having worked towards it and then losing, you know, the money that she worked towards it because she put it into her uncle.
Like Sally Jackson either has read The Artist's Way or doesn't need The Artist's Way. I'm not sure which one it is, but like
but either way, yes,
she's not blocked. Like she knows that, you know, there's no wrong time. Like it's all in your own time, and she will get there, and she can still have those dreams, and they're valid, and she's working toward them. And then Percy gets the nerve up to ask about his dad, and her eyes go all misty because she still loves him. She loves her prince. And I think it's like so natural for a kid who doesn't know a parent to like want stories about them. Like even if it's the same stories over and over again. And he says he never gets tired of hearing them. And it's interesting too, like the way that she only sees the good in Percy, she like also only sees the good in Poseidon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does he have he has flaws?
Yep.
He's got a couple flaws, but you know, her description is like he was kind, tall, handsome, powerful, but gentle, and it's like and other things.
And a couple of other, a little like asterisks on the powerful is like godly level of powerful.
Yeah, you know, is he using that power anyway? But I think that, you know, but again, like this is her being very consistent of like she sees the good in people, and I think that's one of her strengths for sure.
And I also think like she wants Percy to see the good in his dad. You know,
like, absolutely.
I think it's very clear that. I think I already said this in this episode, but that like despite his father's absence, she wants him to think like kindly and well, you know.
And he says you have his black hair, you have his green eyes, and I wish he could see you. He would be so proud. And you know, that confuses Percy. He's like, I'm a dyslective, hyperactive boy with a D+ report card, kicked out of school for the 6th time in 6 years. And I think this is where like he relates her later to, you know, the way that Mr. Brynner is like supporting Percy and saying that, you know, like he can live up to these things and being proud of him, and it's like confusing because other people aren't talking about him in this way, and it doesn't stack up to like the societal expectations that he's been taught are the way that you measure how someone should be proud of you or how successful you are.
And I am very curious to know, and I can't remember if we do find this out in the book or not, but when she says, I wish he could see you, like, I can't remember. It made me really wonder, like, does she know about the pact that they wouldn't have kids? And so does she know that, like, not only is it, oh, he's a god, but that there's this other level of he literally cannot acknowledge Percy's existence because then
part
he'd be
of me thinks
the oath.
Maybe because of the story that she tells, like the sort of mortal version where she's like, oh, it's kind of almost like they had a forbidden love, and I think that that's kind of like in the mortal version of the story. So I do wonder if she does, and that's part of why she's so understanding about him not being present. And then it's interesting because, you know, Percy has this memory, this feeling that he's seen his dad or been in the presence of his dad before. And his mom's like, no. Oh, she says, no, honey. She is able to say honey in a way that is sincere.
Okay, there we go. We've answered the question.
Like, I call people honey sometimes, and I only ever mean it in a positive way. So I've just been waiting for, like, the sincere honey to happen. So she has both versions. But, you know, I think it's interesting. Like, he remembers this warm glow and this smile, and I'm just like, I'm sure Poseidon showed up, like, at some point. Like, I think he was curious, too.
Even if Sally wasn't aware, like, he might have shown up at a time when, like, she wasn't around. Maybe, like, popped
That's
in
my
really
thought.
Quickly
Yeah, he, like, popped into the nursery
like, in the other room. Yeah. Because I don't think she would lie to him.
No,
like,
I don't think so either.
She knew no. that he had even stopped by once. Like, I don't think she would lie to him.
There's no reason to either.
Yeah. I think that this is, like, Percy is remembering a moment, like you're saying.
Yeah.
When Poseidon kind of, like, popped into the nursery, was standing over the crib, because he just, like, couldn't help himself.
Oh,
which is
totally.
just kind of the tagline of the gods. Couldn't help himself.
Right.
Just
Zeus.
every god. You couldn't help yourself. You just really couldn't help yourself.
Seriously. And also, though, could you have, but that's a whole other thing. Yes. We'll get into that. Yeah. We'll get into that, I am sure. And then, very validly, Percy feels angry at his father, which is also setting up, like, a really important dynamic that is going to be essential to many conflicts in this book and in the
kind
whole
of
series.
The key. Yes. To, like, it will be the key to kind of stopping the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's basically
no kidding.
Percy shaming the gods and going, hey, you're parents.
Totally.
You need to start paying child support. You need to start.
Yeah. At the very bare minimum. But also I'm thinking, like, this is the key dynamic that is why, you know, Luke is able to be manipulated by Kronos too. Yep. And so, like, we're really setting up, you know, how a lot of the kids interact with their godly parents or feel toward their godly parents. It's super valid. You know, Percy says maybe it was stupid, but I resented him for going on that ocean voyage, for not having the guts to marry my mom. I love that he says it, like, not having the guts to, like, because that's, like, true. You know, like, Poseidon didn't have the guts to admit that he had broken the pact or whatever he would have needed to do to be able to then be in Percy's life. I think, and he'd left us and now we were stuck with Smelly Gabe. So I think this is a super valid emotional space for Percy to be in.
Absolutely.
And then he says, are you going to send me away again? Which, that line just broke my heart.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking. Because, you know, you understand that why I think, you know, a part of Percy probably feels like, even though he knows his mom loves him.
Totally.
You go to a boarding school enough times, it's like, okay, I'm noticing the pattern here. And it's that I go away and that you send me away. And so it's so heartbreaking. And this, we kind of have another moment that's like the Mr. Brunner conversation before, where Mr. Brunner kind of fumbles it the whole way through and just really digs himself deeper into that hole.
Yeah, Sally does a lot better here.
She does a lot better, but it's another similar conversation where it's just like Percy feels bad because he's missing a massive key critical piece of information that would make him go from feeling like he does not understand himself or the world or why his experience of the world is the way it is, to then being able to go, oh my gosh, no, everything makes sense.
Yep.
No, everything just makes sense. We're getting closer,
but he does not have that information yet. And I think Sally has a sense that it's time for camp. Like, she knows, because she's like, I don't know, but we'll have to do something. And I think she's like resigning herself to that. Because if I remember correctly, we'll get to learn that, you know, she kind of knows it should have already happened at this point, and she just didn't want to let go of him. But so it's like the opposite. He says, because you don't want me around. It's like, actually, it's because of the opposite.
Yeah.
But, you know, he regrets the words as soon as they were out because his mom's eyes well with tears. And it's like, that's their relationship, you know, is like they have this tension because of a secret that Percy can't know yet about the bigger world. But, you know, she says this, like, for your own good, I have to send you away. And he says, her words reminded me of what Mr. Brenner had said, that the best thing was for me to leave Yancey. And so then he remembers that Mr. Brenner said that he wasn't normal. And he says, because I'm not normal. And then Sally has a much better response to that.
Yes.
Where she says, you say that as if it's a bad thing, Percy, but you don't realize how important you are. And then she goes on to say, I thought you'd finally be safe at Yancey. Yeah. And here the you know, I imagine it like, okay, there's like a pane of glass and we've had some like pressure points happening. And this is like the first cracks that are starting to show through, where she's admitting that there is a danger. And he says, safe from what? And then we get this really interesting flashback situation.
Yes, but before we move on to that, I just want to say that I do think it is her response to him saying, because I'm not normal, I think is incredibly powerful, that she doesn't go, no, like, you are normal. But she goes, you say that as if it's a bad thing. Like, she's not denying that he has had bizarre things happen to him, that he has not, that, like, she's not denying that there is a societal standard for normal and that he does not fit in that societal standard of normal. What she's saying is, it's not bad that that's the truth, you know. And I think that that's really powerful, because it doesn't deny Percy and his experience and his reality. You know, it says, yes, that is your experience, your reality, and the thing that I'm going to kind of like push back on is that it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
Totally.
You know?
That's
and
such an important part
really
of the books too. Yeah, no, you're totally right.
Yeah.
Like, the books are written to also normalize like ADHD and dyslexia and all these things. So I do think that's such an important theme that you've pulled out, is like, not being normal isn't a bad thing. I think that's like, that's so important. We all need to hear that. I'm still looking for someone who is normal. Like, I don't think I've met them yet. But I do think that, like,
society has created this definition of normal.
Yeah.
Oops. But no one fits into it.
Yeah. That doesn't seem to exist in anyone fully. But I do think a lot of us have had the experience of, like, feeling that other people have some quality or characteristic or experience or something that, like, we missed out on, that we don't have, that we feel different. And so whether anyone meets up to that standard of normal that is set or not, hearing that's like not a bad thing is important. Is such a big part of this book. So totally.
So then, like you were saying, Percy gets this flood of memories of all the weird, scary things that had ever happened to him, some of which he tried to forget, and we follow.
Valid.
So the examples
Relatable.
are, very valid, very relatable.
Forgetting the trauma stuff.
Yes. So we have first, it's an example from 3rd grade.
This one's like really scary.
Oh, it's terrifying. A man in a black trench coat had stalked him on the playground.
Absolutely
when
not.
the teachers had threatened, I know, terrifying. They threatened to call the police. He went away growling, but no one believed him. When he told them that under the broad-rimmed hat, the man only had one eye right in the middle of his head. Cyclops.
I did Google it just to make sure there weren't any other one-eyed creatures in Greek mythology, just because I was curious. And it's just the 3 women who share the eye is the other sort of like one eye situation.
Right. Yeah.
But no, confirmed. Pretty sure this is a Cyclops, which is very interesting given future characters.
I know. Well, given the next book.
Yes, absolutely. So we're getting that introduction right here.
And then we have preschool, where, and this felt like classic, like straight out of Disney's Hercules.
I mean, this is in the Hercules myth. Like, I confirmed. It is in the Hercules myth.
Okay, because I was like, it's in the Disney Hercules movie.
Yeah. Which is not fully accurate to the myth, so it's fair to question that.
So when he was in preschool, a teacher accidentally put him down for a nap in a cot that had a snake that a snake had slithered into. And his mom screamed when she came to pick him up and found him playing with a limp, scaly rope he'd somehow managed to strangle to death with his little meaty toddler
For
hands.
context, I have a snake phobia. So I am over here like, no. Interestingly, in the Hercules myth, Hera sends the snake because she's mad about Hercules being born.
Yes. My little conspiracy theory teacher was a monster, putting him in, because this whole like accidentally put him down for a nap.
And how are you gonna do that?
Like, is a snake? Because I'm like, I don't think we have, unless there are snakes in Greek mythology that are monsters. That I'm like, my little conspiracy theory is teacher was maybe.
I think that makes sense.
A monster being
because
like,
his mom
maybe
is the one
I
that finds him.
Right.
Though the interesting other thing is, like, it reminds me a little bit in the next series of, like, putting Leo in the fire. Like, Hera putting Leo in the fire.
Totally,
and so, like, almost like, because it's kind of like a test or something. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, maybe the teacher's a monster. Maybe somehow this is like a heroic test someone's putting through. I don't know exactly. But it does a little bit remind me of putting Leo in the fire, you know?
No, that's true. Yeah. As kind of a test of your like demigod strength. Yeah. And then he goes on to say that in every single school something creepy had happened, something unsafe, and I was forced to move.
Oh, that's so rough.
Which is so sad. But what I do appreciate is that he does recognize that, like, creepy and unsafe things happened, and he had to leave not because he did anything wrong, but because he was unsafe where he was at. That like he was forced to move.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of goes both ways on that. Like, sometimes he does, I got expelled 6 times in 6 years, and he puts that on himself. But then and he's trying to forget these instances, you know. But in this moment, he's remembering. He's like, oh, like I had to leave because it was unsafe for me.
I think it's as he's starting to put the puzzle pieces together, I think he's shifting from, I was the like bad student who got myself expelled, to being like, hold on, wait a second. I actually think, you know, there were these unsafe things, these creepy things happening. Yeah. And my expulsion was maybe not really my own fault. You know?
100%.
Like
100%. And then, you know, he's thinking about telling his mom about what happened, calling it, like you said, a weird hallucination.
Because the gaslighting worked.
But also he has a strange feeling that the news would end the trip to Montauk. And I was like, that's so relatable.
Yep.
As an adult, as a kid, you know, that like, it's relatable procrastination, right? Of like sharing information. Because you're like, I'm having a good time. I don't want to end this good time. Like, I think this
especially he's come off of such a rough semester. You know, they've only just started their little little getaway.
He wants to be at the beach.
Yes, it's very understandable that he just wants some peace at the beach. He doesn't want to end it soon. I
get it. And then interestingly, you know, Percy feels like his mom's always sending him away. And his mom is kind of coming in with the opposite thing, saying, I've tried to keep you as close to me as I could. You know, and so we get kind of like the opposite there. And then we get another they, but it's a different they than the other days we've been having.
But another kind of vague, ominous they. Yes. This is like not a monstrous they, but it is another kind of like, okay, who's they?
Yep, who is
that told her it was a mistake. But then she says, there's only one other option, Percy, the place your father wanted to send you. Yep. And I just can't stand to do it. Yeah. So this is, you know, we do, I guess, kind of get the sense here that Poseidon did, like, kind of give Sally Jackson the down low.
That's what I'm saying. Like, she has some information for sure.
Yeah. I do wonder, I am curious, like, when she says the place your father wanted to send you, does that mean, like, did Poseidon want that from when he was, like, a little baby?
Given what happened to Talia, which I'm sure Poseidon... actually, no. How close are they? Percy would have already been born. But either way, given what happened to Talia, I feel like probably get him there as early as possible, knowing that being a kid of one of the big three.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's just so sad because it's, you know, I think Sally Jackson was wise in knowing that he needed a normal childhood before the introduction to the mythological world.
Sure.
And it's such a bummer if you think about the alternate universe where, like, Percy didn't get to really grow up with Sally Jackson, and instead, you know, not that Camp Half is a bad place to grow up, but the kind of more sad alternate universe where he doesn't really get to have this lovely relationship with his mom and didn't get to have a semi kind of normal childhood where he did get to just be a child, even
I think it's an example where there's like not a perfect choice. Like, it's not a perfect choice to keep him, and especially for so long when like all these things, like, he's not going to know why he's struggling so much. He's not going to know why bad things are happening. He's going to be in danger, like real danger. That's not a perfect choice. But sending him away from his mom, who's like great for him, to a camp without her where she can't go, that's not a perfect choice either.
Right. Especially, I mean, if you think about, you know, knowing, okay, a child of the big three is going to be immensely powerful, it's almost even more important that they have a very kind, caring parental figure in their life first, you know, because they're going to turn into a being of like immense power, you know,
for sure. Yeah, there's some consequences
in good ways or bad ways. And so, you know, it is kind of like this catch-22 of like, almost because he has the potential to become such a powerful demigod, he almost needs a like kind, you know, like with a normal mom upbringing, like more so. But there are dangers and stuff that come with that.
And I'm sure, like, for a lot of parents, that you're constantly choosing between one imperfect choice and another imperfect choice for your kid, and that's really hard, because I know, like, I have friends who are parents, and like they constantly want to do the best for their kids, and you know, life is full of complexity and imperfect choices, and I think Sally's doing the best that she can, and that's really mirroring
absolutely,
you know, real life in a lot of ways. It's interesting, you know, my father wanted me to go to a special school, and she says not a school, a summer camp, and I wrote, but also a school, because A, they're learning things, okay?
Right, yes.
Hear me out. And B, some people are there year round. And I just, it's sort of both. Like, I know it's a summer camp, but that's the point. It's Camp Half-Blood. But, like, also a school.
You know? It's kind of like, it's like reverse Hogwarts.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, instead of the kids being there during the school year and most going home, but not all, you don't have to. It's like the opposite, where it's most kids are there during the summer because there are a lot of demigods who can, you know, go to regular schools and stuff and be okay. But there are the ones like Percy where it's, you know, would start to get too dangerous, though he does get to
and like
go back, have regular school years.
Just can't. And
most
of the time. But I just thought that was kind of funny. And I think it would be really trippy to be like, my dad, who I've never met, told my mom to send me to a summer camp.
To a summer camp of all places.
And why is that a secret? Like, I that would be really weird. That would be a really weird thing to learn.
Absolutely.
And I love the transparency here, though. You know, like we're saying, Sally Jackson does not lie. She does not gaslight girl boss. Like, she is like, I am sorry, I can't talk about it. And I love that, because I'm just like, sure, like, maybe you can't talk about it, but at least be like, there's a thing I'm not talking about.
Exactly.
Because then the other person doesn't feel crazy. Like, then the other person knows, like, there is a thing that I can't know, but I'm not being lied to about that thing even existing. And it's so sad, because she's like, it might mean saying goodbye to you for good, which doesn't end up being what happens. I'm not sure why that's like so in her head that that's what it would be.
I would guess it's probably because when Poseidon was explaining all of this to her, he was probably saying, as a child of the big three, he shall be so powerful, every monster wants to kill him, so he'll have to live there year round, and he won't be able to be a part of the mortal world at all.
And like, you can't go
Poseidon,
there.
I think, was probably giving that kind of worst case scenario. Like, he can't, as like, he will be too powerful to live in the mortal world at all.
And then he just pieces out. Love that. Great
but
parenting.
I'm assuming that's kind of probably what what Sally got, which makes sense to a certain degree. And you even, at the end of this book, there is a little bit of discussion of like, well, but Percy, shouldn't you stay? And he's kind of like, I will take care of myself, like I will be okay.
Right.
But I do think it probably, the like lens that she got from Poseidon was probably this like
the more extreme version of events.
Yes. Yeah.
And she doesn't see him that often, but she doesn't right now either. So anyway, I am excited about this dream that we have next. This visually has always really stuck out to me and
oh my gosh,
and just like lived rent free in my brain.
Yes.
I have a question about it. So we have 2 beautiful animals, a white horse, Poseidon, a golden eagle, Zeus, are trying to kill each other at the edge of the surf. They're fighting. A monstrous voice is chuckling somewhere beneath the earth as the ground is rumbling, goading the animals to fight harder. Classic Kronos. Percy's trying to stop them from killing each other. Like, this is basically, again, we have like, here's the whole book in a paragraph. Right. Just in case you needed that. But here's my question. Because Percy, so far, he has had nightmares about things that did happen previously.
Yeah.
He will have dreams about things happening concurrently.
Yes.
Do you think this is actually happening when he's dreaming it, or is it a metaphor dream?
Oh, interesting.
I've always thought of it as a metaphor dream, but as I was reading it, I thought he doesn't have a lot of metaphor dreams otherwise. Most of his dreams, if not all of the rest of them, are literal dreams.
Yes.
So is this actually happening?
So every time I've read this before, I've always thought this was literally happening to some degree, whether like whether they were truly in horse and eagle form and fighting on the actual beach, like I always thought that basically like, okay, Zeus and Poseidon are currently fighting each other to some degree. The thing that I was very curious about reading it this time, the one thing that I noted was when Percy says he knows he had to stop them from killing each other, but he was running in slow motion.
Yeah.
I went, Kronos. Yeah. And a little kind of point for when he literally does.
Yep.
On that fight on the boat, on the Princess Andromeda. What's the boat called again? Yeah. When he literally, is forced in, time is slowed down on him, and he's moving in slow motion. It was like a fun little thing that I picked up on to be like, oh my gosh. Again, introduced so early,
Totally.
But the ending of, I saw the eagle dive down, its beak aimed at the horse's wide eyes, and I screamed no. I kind of wondered, like, basically, is this what would have happened had Percy not essentially intervened?
Right.
Like, would Zeus have essentially taken out Poseidon?
Why not?
Had Percy not really fully intervened? So this was the kind of new interpretation that I got of this dream, was that Percy was seeing like almost kind of like the outcome if
like the alternate future.
Yes, like the kind of like if the prophecy does not get fulfilled, this is what happens.
I think it's always really interesting in book series where there are prophecies and dreams to kind of like track how they function. So yes, it is like he's seeing an alternate future, or like the repercussions if he doesn't get to camp, if he doesn't fulfill the prophecy, if he doesn't go on the quest. I'm curious to like see if other dreams will be similar in any way. Like, are they going to be concurrent? Are they going to be potential futures? He has other past dreams for sure, because he's dreaming about the labyrinth and other stuff later. But very curious about that. And then,
To your point, though, of the question of, like, is it happening or not? I do think, to a certain extent, the fact that a hurricane is then happening and they're on a beach does kind of make me think, I feel like Zeus and Poseidon were actually fighting each other.
But it also reminds me of just, like, moments where you wake up and there's something actually happening around you that has somehow made it into your dream. Which is, like,
fully
hilarious. Always really funny. Unless it's scary, but
right. And then it's terrifying.
Then it's really terrifying. But yeah, I think, it definitely crept in to the dream. He doesn't see a horse or an eagle. I love the description that lightning is making false daylight. That's such a great description.
It's an incredible description.
And 20-foot waves are pounding the dunes like artillery. Yes. I'm like, okay, we got another good one.
These two in particular, I just had a moment where I was like, God, I love reading. You know, like of just like, I love reading and like reading someone describe intense lightning, like lightning making false daylight and 20-foot waves pounding the dunes like artillery. Like every time I read a description like that is so visual and is something I would never thought of, but so perfectly captures like what I have seen or experienced, I'm just like, God, I love reading. I love so I'm like, the magic of reading.
100%. And then with the next,
because it's so different. Like, sorry, but you don't get lightning makes false daylight.
No,
if you're watching a movie or TV show, you only get that.
Well,
in a book,
no, it's like it's like it's poetic at that point. Like sometimes it's like, God, this is poetry. Yeah, a children's book. I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, for as much as I love movies and TV shows, there's something, they each have their own unique things. Yeah. And there's just, when you read, you just get such special descriptions like that.
Totally.
You know, whether it's about a character or in this moment, a storm, it's just, it's incredible and I love it.
I agree. And then Sally wakes up with the next thunderclap and just says, hurricane.
She knows.
And Percy's like, I knew that was crazy. Long Island never sees hurricanes. It's early in the summer. I'm like, climate change, whatever. Yeah. It's like, that's going to change. But I love the line, the ocean seemed to have forgotten.
I know, which I just feel like is like him without meaning to subtly calling out Poseidon and being like, hey man, it's not hurricane season. If you're gonna get mad, you gotta wait to start the hurricanes till it's hurricane season.
Poseidon is like, you can get mad anytime he wants because it'll just rain, but Poseidon has like a limited window in the summer where he's allowed to get angry. He has to save all his rage for then.
Or it's like pick a different thing. You know, he can make some waves crash, he can do other stuff, you know. But it did feel like a funny little kind of dig at Poseidon of being like, you forgot hurricane season hasn't started yet, and that it's weird that there's a hurricane. Yep.
This is a tell of the magical world. But over the roar of the wind, he hears a distant bellow, an angry, tortured sound that made his hair stand on end, and that is very exciting. Let's go. So, also, very exciting little hint at what's to come in the next chapter, but first we have to get to the title of this chapter.
Well, but very quickly. Yes. Just because I'm really on the description train. Yes. Calling it an angry and tortured sound, given like the myth of the Minotaur, like being a very tortured creature and monster, like the fact that the Minotaur's bellow sounds tortured is like, well, because that's a pretty tortured monster. Yeah. You know. So, anyways, I just he's held on to that every time
he's come back. However many times that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have a desperate voice, mallets on the sand, someone's yelling, pounding on the door. This is getting like just like up and up and up and up. Yes. And we have Grover, but he wasn't exactly Grover. And I love that we have to wait like a whole page.
Yes, so long. It feels like we're in Percy's brain and he's kind of buffering.
Does not compute.
You know, he's trying to process. He's buffering. He's like, what? I don't understand what I'm looking at. I'm trying to make sense of what I'm looking at. I can't really make sense of what I'm looking at. And so it takes us basically like a whole page. Yeah. And then actually the audience learn what he's looking at.
Sally is looking at Percy in terror, not scared of Grover, but of why he'd come, which I love that he can discern that difference in her face as well. And she's like, oh dang, we should have talked about the things already.
I love that she immediately goes, what happened at school? What didn't you tell me? Like she just knows. She's on it. She absolutely knows that something very bad has happened.
And then Grover gives us I looked up the translation.
Oh,
Zeus and the other gods, is what he says.
Amazing.
It's right behind me. Didn't you tell her? And Percy's like, nope, I didn't want to leave the beach, so I did not in fact tell her.
Yep. But does recognize that Grover cursed in ancient Greek, and he understood him perfectly.
Yes.
Which is our first moment of Percy hearing ancient Greek.
Yep.
And immediately understanding it.
And a nice little clue for the readers, because this is, you know, we don't really get a hint of that so much in the Latin class, that there would be, and I guess it would mostly be Latin, but like,
because it's Latin, and he's not a child of the Roman versions
which
of the
is
gods.
Cool. That there's that distinction. But yeah, this is like our first chance, our first opportunity to get that. And we get the line that Grover didn't have his pants on, and where his legs should be ... where his legs should be ... and I was just like, okay, suspense. We're like dragging this out as literally long.
We're still, Percy's brain is going buffering. It's like Ramble Spiral of Doom, buffering. Like,
and then my mom looked at me sternly and talked to me in a tone she'd never used before. Percy, tell me now. And it's like,
serious
things have gotten
Sally.
serious
Sally.
We have serious Protector Grover and serious Sally, which I kind of love their dynamic, because most of the time you would feel like Sally is more of the adult than Grover, but Grover is about to be like, what the heck, Sally?
Yeah.
Like, you dropped the ball, Sally. So I love that, like, they kind of take turns, like, like getting on each other's case about stuff. But there's no time. She grabs her purse, tosses Percy his rain jacket, which is adorable that she takes the time to do that, and says, get in the car, both of you, go. And we get our first little description, our little hint.
Yep. Well, we get our actual, we get Grover ran for the Chimera, but he wasn't running exactly. He was trotting, shaking his shaggy hindquarters, and suddenly his story about a muscular disorder in his legs made sense to me. I understood how he could run so fast and still limp when he walked.
But I'm just saying, if you haven't read yet, you just cover what's underneath it. What we have so far is shaggy hindquarters.
Yes. Hindquarters. No, I know. We still don't. And even with this reveal of because where his feet should be, there were no feet. There were cloven hooves. Yep. Like, we're not actually really getting we're kind of getting the picture, but we're not really getting 100% of the picture. But if you know Greek mythology,
once you get to the hooves, you know, you're there.
It's a
But
satyr.
I just think, like, for a character that's often so humorous, to start with shaggy hindquarters is just really funny. Like, that's the only description we get, like, first. And we have to read several more sentences before we get to, like, the cloven hooves. It's just, it's so fun. It's disorienting in the best way. And, again, just a really nice, suspenseful end to the chapter. You know, where his feet would be, there were no feet, there were cloven hooves. Like, how do you not turn the page? I didn't, for the record. But it was really hard. It was very difficult.
No, I know. Well, because at this point, we now have kind of reached the peak around this greater mystery of, like, what are all these dangerous things that have been happening to Percy. We also have Grover saying it's right behind me. So we're being chased by something. Which we've also heard the angry, tortured bellow of. And then also we now have Grover reveal he's actually a satyr. So it's like we've really built up to this incredibly massive high, which it's wild that it's just chapter 3. Like, reading this book so much more slowly and closely than I ever have. I think probably even than when I first read this book. It's kind of incredible to feel like, oh my gosh, so much has happened. We're probably a third of the way through the book now. And it's like, nope, we're on chapter 3. We are barely at the start of this book.
But we're not even at camp
so much
yet.
has happened.
Like,
I know.
Like, chomping at the bit. I'm chomping at the bit for camp. I'm really excited for the next chapter too. It's such a good one. Things are really picking up. If we've reached a level in this chapter, it's just gonna get up and up in these stakes. And we get our first little comeuppance for Gabe, and I'm so psyched for that.
I don't remember if it happens in the next chapter, but at the expense of Sally, though not fully.
Absolutely. The only thing that will get me through the rest of this book is knowing what happens at the end of the book.
Yes.
And I think it's, you know, in terms of a hero's journey, it's right on time for Percy. You know, they're called Greek tragedies for a reason. So, but it's going to be a very eventful, exciting chapter, and it's going to get us that bit closer to our destination that we're very excited for. So this was really fun. This was a less depressing chapter than last week's chapter, minus it was a more infuriating chapter.
I would argue. Okay.
Well, I want to say for me, because last chapter was like sadder than I realized. We were talking about that afterwards. So it was less depressing or like saddening, even though it was still saddening. But it was infuriating. It was more infuriating. And Sally, of course, being the bright spot in all of that. But the beach stuff is really fun.
Yes. This was the most, I think, like you were kind of saying, this chapter I feel like ping-ponged the most between emotional states, you know, because all the Gabe stuff for me is both depressing and infuriating, and you're kind of going between that and then the beautiful, wonderful, you know, like being that is Sally Jackson and her warmth and her light and being like, oh, everything's okay. And then Gabe would come back and you're like, everything's terrible and everything's awful. And then you'd be back with Sally and you'd be like, oh, okay, we're okay. And then Gabe would come back and you're like, everything's terrible, you know? And then they finally get to Montauk and you're like, oh, okay, I can breathe. Everything's okay. And then everything the storm and everything is terrible again. And so it's the most you're kind of getting, I
really
feel like as the reader pulled between being like, everything is terrible. And
if you will.
An ebb
such
and a
as
flow.
Maybe a wave might do. Cool. Well, I'm really excited for our next chapter.
Me too.
To dive in, to meet our friend in the underwear. And we will meet back next time for chapter 4. My mother teaches me bullfighting.
Bye.
Bye.